Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1396 of the War News stream. And we have very big news that Moscow is currently under a major missile alert for a Ukrainian attack underway right now. We've also heard that U.S. forces have seized a Chinese-owned supertanker near Venezuela in a wild move, and also Israel's preparing new strikes on Iran as they're warning that Iran's preparing for war. And it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, folks, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of major breaking news from around the world, as we have heard significant developments not only in Eastern Europe, but also within Southeast Asia and the Americas over the course of the day. Currently, the city of Moscow, the capital of the Russian Federation, is under a significant drone and missile warning at this moment, with the Russian Federation putting out an alert that jet-powered drones or vehicles of some form, possibly including the Flamingo long-range cruise missile, are currently on their way to the area of the city of Moscow. Meanwhile, multiple Russian cities throughout the area surrounding Ukraine, including that of Kursk, the Voronezh Oblast, the Rostov-on-Don area, and also the Crimean Peninsula, have already come under major Ukrainian drone attacks and missile attacks and have suffered crippling damage, including additional hits at the Belbek airfield, which have destroyed, at least confirmed at this moment, one additional Su-27 added to the MiG-31 that was also lost yesterday. Meanwhile, a ship is on fire within the Black Sea, which we believe to be the possible other hit, which we were speaking of yesterday. At the moment, it appears that no distress signal has gone out from this vessel, as we still are largely working off of rumor at this moment about this vessel being on fire, but satellite photography does confirm the ship is ablaze. Yet, oddly enough, no distress signal has been sent from the vessel, although this incident happened nearly an entire day ago. Outside of that, the United States of America has seized a Chinese VLCC, otherwise known as a very large crude carrier. From what we understand, The U.S. Coast Guard attempted to board the vessel and then successfully boarded it, and the Chinese captain said, "Kiss my ass," which was very crude of him. That is why we now are hearing that the Chinese have not made a response, at least at the moment, about the seizure of this vessel, but it does appear that this vessel, from what we can find, is not on an existent sanctions list, and there doesn't appear to be, from what we can find at the moment, any form of a court order that allowed for this seizure to be made, generally showing that the United States may be conducting a complete and total blockade of Venezuela, regardless whether ships exist on a sanctions list, and regardless whether or not a U.S. court gives authorization to the United States government to be able to conduct a seizure of any of these vessels. Meanwhile, the Venezuelan government is now hearing, apparently according to their statements, that the Islamic Republic of Iran, thousands of miles away on the other side of the world, is apparently offering assistance to the Venezuelans to attempt to break the U.S. blockade around their country, which appears to be more so of a joke than anything serious. Meanwhile, inside the U.S. government today, we have been able to hear multiple statements. This channel has apparently been called a deep state warmonger by some U.S. officials today, and we've also been able to hear that U.S. intelligence confirmed, which is what led to the crash out today by some U.S. officials, that the Russian Federation is not trying to play nice. The Russian Federation does have a larger ambition and plan to move on beyond Ukraine and to conduct attacks and offensive actions to eventually seize large areas of the former Soviet Union, or what we generally call here on the channel, the Russian Empire. This has also been confirmed inside of the Institute of Study of Wars analysis as well, which is once again showing that the Russian Federation is pretty much at the day of action against NATO, and tensions could not be higher at this moment. After Estonia dealt with a Russian border guard violation near to the area of Vasnarva, we have now heard that an explosion has occurred within the capital of Estonia in Tallinn at some form of an open market within the city. Currently, Estonian authorities are investigating the matter and trying to ascertain who exactly led to this explosion and terroristic incident happening within their capital city. The Polish, meantime, are also currently in the process of arresting a spy who is alleged to have been involved in corroborating and providing information to the Russian FSB about possible shipments of NATO arms through Polish Republic territory. Meanwhile, the Turks have also found another drone, a Russian drone within their territory, this time around the area of the Bandirma city area, or generally just west of the major city of Bursa. Turkish authorities are investigating this incident alongside the other, which was just reported yesterday at Izmit. And it now appears that multiple drone violations have been conducted by the Russian Federation within the NATO territory of the Republic of Turkey. The Israelis are apparently going to be briefing the United States on future strikes against the Islamic Republic of Iran, and as I quote, "We have to get something going." And so they're apparently going to be working on trying to conduct further strikes against the Islamic Republic of Iran. We've also heard that the Iranians are apparently conducting some unusual activities within their aerospace forces and missile forces, which may be suggesting that they are preparing for some form of offensive action, considering that they had already given a warning in November that some form of a war was going to be happening in December. Now that it doesn't appear that that's going to be happening, at least from what we can tell, it's possible that the Iranians might kick it off just so that way their prediction ended up being correct. We also understand the reports from U.S. intelligence is also stating that the Iranians may be getting to a capacity in missile production to be able to produce roughly around 3,000 missiles a month, meaning that they'll become a significant threat within the region, at least regionally, against any countries within the area that would attempt to conduct a war with the Islamic Republic of Iran, especially if they have enough transporter-erector launchers to fire these en masse. Additionally, we have also seen that the Ukrainian armed forces have held their lines today and have inflicted significant casualties against the Russian Federation's armed forces. The Russians have made very little ground, and the Ukrainians are already preparing significant defensive fortifications and structures throughout the entirety of the Zaporizhia front and others to make it even more difficult for the Russians to gain any ground once they hit these defensive lines. We have an absolutely massive amount of news today, folks, as many of y'all can tell, and that was just a summary. Now we have to get into all of the details and information that we have of all of the news that we've gotten throughout the course of the day, starting with our largest stories first, and then moving our way on into the smaller stories of the night. Just to be entirely honest with y'all, there isn't really any small news today. Everything is quite large, and so for that reason, I highly encourage y'all to stick around through the whole news segment tonight, because we have an endless volume of major news that has come out today, and really no story at this point is small, at least for today's coverage. So with that, we are going to be moving on into the major news of the day, moving us directly on into the city of Moscow, the home of broken dreams and failed hopes. We have been able to hear that they have now announced within the area a missile and drone alert. From what we understand, according to statements, there is now a missile alert within the Moscow region, and it's suspected by the Russian Federation that it's some sort of a jet-powered UAV, similar to a Flamingo or the Flamingo itself. The Russian Federation has already been dealing with significant, generally, I guess you could say, recoils from the attack that's been conducted so far, as a major attack has been ongoing for about a few hours at this point into the Russian Federation, and we've already been able to confirm that cities on the path to Moscow, or even way outside of the path to Moscow, have already been hit by the Ukrainian attack so far and have suffered tremendous damage at the hand of Ukrainian drone and missile forces, which have been firing into the Russian Federation over the course of this night. While the city of Moscow is under an ongoing missile and drone alert, we will be keeping an eye on that news and trying to see if we can get any further developments and information coming out of the area of the Moscow air defense perimeter, as it is highly likely that we may see an evolving situation within the area, considering that it is very much the break of dawn within Moscow at this moment, meaning that attacks are still likely at this moment, and the Ukrainian armed forces may have been able to land some successful hits within the area that we have not been able to uncover yet so far, as the footage may have not been published by first-hand accounts on the ground. Nevertheless, the city of Kursk did come under a major hit overnight just a few hours ago, and we were able to see that in this clip right here, showing us a major fire that had broken out in the Kursk area, and we believe that this was at an electrical substation. I gotta tell y'all, apparently the Russians don't believe in chestnuts roasting on an open fire, but one thing I can tell y'all is that their nuts are going to be freezing on an open fire, because this is creating a significant blackout within the area of the city of Kursk. From what we know, a decent amount of the city was connected to this electrical substation, and right now that substation has knocked out, at least with the explosion of the substation, power to tens of thousands of people within one district of the city's electrical grid. With that in mind, it does appear that there is going to be ongoing issues within the city of Kursk to be able to provide electrical energy infrastructure, or electrical power, to those Russian citizens that find themselves quite cold this year within the city of Kursk. Meanwhile, moving further on down, the Ukrainians also repeated this action within the area of Rostov-on-Don, specifically around the area of the town of Aksai. We were able to see that near to a substation in Aksai, it appeared that another substation had been hit tonight and was burning profusely.
It might be a cold winter for the Russians without electricity. What's the main way that Russia heats their homes? Is it by gas or like radiator, or is it by electric? Do you know offhand?
It generally depends, actually. Some modern structures actually get their heat from electricity. Others actually get theirs from a central heating unit within the city, where the steam, more so from the steam generator, is directed through pipes to their radiators. So it really depends.
Interesting. Well, it's going to be a bad time anyway without electricity to like do things inside your house during the winter. That's a tough situation.
Yeah, it is a pretty tough situation, that's for sure. And you can tell by the strobe light fest down there.
Some people said they're still using oak to heat. I don't think they're using oak. I think they've moved beyond that in Russia, but they're not too many steps above that yet. I think they've moved on from wood, though.
They have generally moved on from wood. If anything, they're most likely using stove coal these days, which is kind of getting closer to coke, which is coal that has had all of the coal gases cooked out of it, so that way it's just raw carbon. Generally, it's somewhere in between the midline there of not being just raw coal, but also kind of getting towards being coke almost. But nevertheless, we do understand that this will be causing another significant blackout within the area of Aksai, a suburb of the city of Rostov-on-Don on its eastern side, and it will be a significant issue for the Russian Federation. Some people have been saying other things in the chat about creative ways that the Russian Federation tries to heat their homes, including whale blubber and a couple of others. I can tell you that they are not using whale blubber. This is not the 19th century. They have moved far beyond that in means and ability, and they now use coal. And I mean the crappiest kind of coal, because Russian coal is actually some of the worst in quality in the world. It's bituminous coal that burns at an incredibly low temperature and creates an excessively large amount of smoke, and also gas as well. It's not a of good coal to burn, and a lot of Russians, actually, funnily enough, folks, in the Kaliningrad Oblast, still use coal as their primary form of heating within their homes during the winter months. Throughout most of the Russian Federation, though, especially within the western part of the country in Europe, primarily they get their heating either by electrical heaters or they get them by steam radiators, which are provided heat from a central steam unit within most cities. Or there may be some different districts within these cities where the steam generators will be able to operate different portions or quarters of the city or different districts as a whole to be able to provide steam to all of the radiators that are still connected to the system. It's a very similar operational principle to the ones that you would see in a place like New York City. But moving on out of that news and on down into Sevastopol, and more importantly, the Belbek airfield, there was a major hit that was once again landed at this airfield. Many of y'all will remember that just a few days ago, the Russian Federation lost a MiG-31, two, I believe it was Nebo long-range radars, and a 2N96 radar, if I'm not mistaken. All three of those being long-range radars. The YN96 it actually was, is the main radar used for the S-400 air defenses within the area, and the Nebos are also used fairly similarly. We also did confirm that at least one aircraft of MiG-31 had been lost in the attack. Now today, we've been able to confirm that the Ukrainians attacked the airbase again. And from what we understand, they had an even easier time this time, considering that most of the air defense systems around the airfield had been knocked out due to their radars being destroyed. For this matter, the Ukrainians were able to successfully hit and destroy an Su-27 that was sitting on an open tarmac at the Belbek airbase due to the fact that the Russian air defenses had largely been taken down. We understand that an additional one was also hit, but we were not able to get any picture evidence to confirm at least a freeze frame of the footage from the drone attack, confirming that second one to be hit. But from what we're hearing from Ukrainian reports from the armed forces of Ukraine, two Su-27s were actually hit and destroyed at the Belbek airfield over the course of the night. This means that the Russians have lost about $60 million worth of combat aircraft within the singular attack, and not only including the MiG-31, which also is roughly around $25 to $30 million. So over the past 3 days, they've lost about nearly $100 million worth of combat aircraft. It's not an incredibly good loss number to have, and it's only going to get worse from here.
Yeah, it's honestly crazy if you really think about the total losses overall. They're losing hundreds of millions worth of aircraft that we're seeing here. They lost the $500 million submarine in the port, and they also potentially lost one of their patrol boats that the FSB uses for the Coast Guard. They've been losing a lot of stuff just over the last 2 weeks alone. Ukraine's really been doing a number on their equipment.
And if we try and even recall the numbered equipment that we know that they lost two S-400 launcher systems, or TELs, within Belgrade. They lost a $500 million submarine at Novorossiysk. They also lost what we believe to be a $40 to $50 million Coast Guard patrol vessel around the area of Novorossiysk as well. They have lost one MiG-31 and two Su-27s at Sevastopol. And not only that, they've lost about 5 shadow tankers over about the past week and a half. All of that happening within about a week and a half from when we're talking right now.
And don't forget about the, I think it was the Mi-8s, or they lost some helicopters too in there as well. They lost like a handful of those over the last couple of weeks as well.
Oh, yeah, they did. Yeah, they did lose a couple of those as well. I completely forgot about that.
There's so many losses, you can't even keep up with them anymore. I mean, Russia's losing stuff by the dozens.
I mean, man, like, you know, they sit there and say, they're singing that song Heartaches by the Number, but they're sitting there talking about, I got losses by the number, like, in troubles. Man, I mean, honestly, man, they're about to start absolutely crying at this point from how much stuff they're losing. I mean, the amount of cost of the items that they're losing, they're such specialized in such refined end items that they're losing. It's nothing cheap like a main battle tank or anything along those lines on a military scale. They're losing equipment that is usually incredibly limited in number, like larger crude tankers, submarines, and air defense systems, which are exorbitantly expensive on top of helicopters and aircraft, and they're losing them by the dozens these days at this point a week. So it's quite good to see, and it is showing us the Russian Federation is still taking some pretty exceptional losses. Now, another loss that we have been able to confirm today due to satellite photography is the loss of the other alleged shadow tanker that it had been hit by the Ukrainians. From what we understand, the Safin Baroness appears to actually have been hit within the area of the Black Sea. This was reported yesterday that there was some sort of evidence that the vessel was on fire. and people were waiting for video confirmation or some form of satellite records to actually confirm the hit on the vessel. Yesterday, when this was reported, we stated that it was a possible hit, and we weren't able to confirm it yet because no satellite or photography evidence had lined up yet to the exact location in the Black Sea where this vessel apparently had come under distress and where it was last seen. Now today, satellite photography has confirmed that this ship is on fire and appears to have been directly hit. It is in the exact location, right there, where the Maxine Baroness was seen yesterday and was claimed to have been hit and caught on fire. Just to show you all this really quickly, this was its last reported location, at least on Maritime Tracker, to show where the vessel was. And if you look at the position of that fire, it's literally in the exact same spot, accounting for about several miles or so of drift, where the vessel was reported to have been hit yesterday in the midst of its voyage. This is something that is showing us that this is another shadow tanker that has actually been hit, and not only that, that satellite picture here is showing us that there appears to be a fire on the port stern side of the vessel, which appears to be burning profusely right next to the superstructure. That is highly indicative of prior patterns that we've seen of Ukrainian drone attacks conducted by Sea Baby naval drones, which usually directly impact right along the waterline, near to the rudder assemblies, or near to the engine rooms, which are directly below the superstructure at the stern of these vessels. For this reason, we are confirming on this show at this point that this vessel has been hit and is on fire due to irrefutable satellite photography, and it is confirming to us that the Ukrainian armed forces are continuing to hit Russian shadow tankers at an exorbitantly high rate. And regardless whether the Russians want to make it sound like a big deal or not, this is a significantly large deal. A lot of these companies that are conducting these actions are going to become incredibly leery of trying to conduct any actions to either gain access to Russian oil or to try and ship it to foreign markets. This is going to be something that will start to greatly affect them. It affects insurance premiums because of the involved risk, and not only that, they could lose the ship entirely, and they may not be able to find a replacement for their company to operate. This means in terms of raw tonnage that these companies can move, they will not be able to move the same amount of tonnage because these ships are literally at the bottom of the ocean and completely unusable. So for that reason, these companies may start to withdraw their involvement from the Russian Federation's oil industries, and we may also see that as a result of that, the Russian Federation may not have a way to get its oil to market in any large number, even if there was anyone that could buy it, like the Republic of India or the People's Republic of China. Another thing that I gotta say is that the Ukrainians are beating up these shadow tankers better than Jake Paul was beat up last night. I mean, that was something right there, like I gotta say. But moving on from that, we also have been able to hear, moving outside of the Black Sea, that there has been some other major developments that have gone on today, speaking of tankers, on the other side of the world, actually quite close to home for most of our viewers watching the channel right now, which are from the United States of America. And that's actually going to be moving us on into the incredibly important and wildly I guess you could say, significant developments that have happened today in international waters in the Eastern Mediterranean near to Venezuela. And that, of course, is about to move us on into the hunt for Captain Craig Sparrow. Today's news, however, I would usually make this a bit of a joke, but today's news is actually somewhat significant and quite serious in what has been done today, and we might see that there is some sort of a larger collateral that may come out of this due to what we've done. So, moving us on down into the area of the Eastern Mediterranean, we do have to cover the news of the hunt for Captain Craig Sparrow. To bring y'all up to speed today, we did get reports the other day that Chinese tankers were going to be leaving Venezuelan ports with Venezuelan escorts. From what we understand, a Chinese very large crude carrier, also called a VLCC tanker, carrying approximately 1.8 million barrels of Venezuela's highest grade Mare 16 crude, had departed the Jose terminal bound for China under escort by the Venezuelan Navy. This vessel had been underway heading outside of Venezuelan waters for the past 48 hours, and we did not get any additional reports on the condition of the vessel or where it was and what it was doing after that point. One thing that was incredibly important, however, is that we do understand that sometime during its transit out of Venezuelan territorial waters, a U.S. Air Force, a U.S. Navy FA-18 Super Hornet actually started to conduct racetracks over this very, very large crude carrier tanker itself, as it was starting to make its way out to sea. We stated yesterday, when we were looking at that development, that it was highly likely that the United States Navy was preparing to conduct surveillance to be able to get the groundwork laid out for some sort of an interdiction to be done against the vessel, either a stand down with the Venezuelan, a standoff with the U.S. Navy, considering that they were attempting to break the blockade, or an attempted seizure of the vessel. And there were several ways that this could have gone, much like we stated yesterday. One, the Venezuelans do not back off, and the United States doesn't back off, and we get it in a shootout with the Venezuelans right then and there. Or the United States backs off and the Venezuelans actually broke the blockade, or they back off and we end up seizing the vessel. Those are the three possible outcomes that we outlined the other day when we started to hear of this ship trying to make its way into international waters with a Venezuelan escort. It turns out that the third option was actually the option that happened. It turns out that apparently at some point the Venezuelan naval escort either never existed or they completely dematerialized near to this vessel and retreated back into Venezuelan waters. For this reason, the Venezuelans did not break the blockade, and as a matter of fact, this is a very touchy situation that's now developed at this point. The United States Coast Guard and Navy has now been conducting an action to seize a Chinese-owned tanker carrying crude that had already been purchased by a company that operates in the People's Republic of China. Video footage did emerge of this today of the United States Coast Guard taking the ship, and we were able to see this footage right here. It's about 7 minutes long, and we're going to show about as much of it as we can here and talk about what was going on. Here we can see, first off, the United States Coast Guard MH-60 Blackhawk. They actually have a different version of the Blackhawk. That's not the exact designation. Hovering over the deck directly ahead of the superstructure, dropping rappelling ropes to prepare for the crew to be able to rappel off the helicopter and on ship. We see this other helicopter here conducting reconnaissance for that helicopter and also providing some form of additional fire support if necessary, if for some reason there was armed security on board the vessel. And also generally just provide oversight. We see the helicopter continuing to hover. We can actually see it lowering down to the deck almost.
Also, by the way, I think this was a combination or a similar operation here that was carried out by both, not just the U.S. Coast Guard with the Maritime Special Reaction Team. I think this was also assisted this time by the U.S. Navy. So it wasn't just the Coast Guard, it was a joint operation.
That is correct. We do understand that it was the Coast Guard's teams that actually went on ship, but apparently they were supported by units of the United States Navy, although those units really haven't been disclosed to the public to any large degree. Once again, we do have to applaud the current administration's transparency in that matter, considering that nobody has a damn clue really what was involved on the Navy's end to be able to assist in seizing this vessel. But we do confirm that this Seahawk was used by the U.S. Coast Guard. We can now see one Coast Guardsman on deck, apparently guiding the helicopter from what we can tell by his arms. He appears to be trying to guide it to a more suitable landing spot or an area for the remainder of the Coast Guard forces to be able to rappel off of the vessel, or more so off the helicopter.
Also, by the way, I see people bringing up a very interesting point while we're watching this footage. I see Crashin saying, isn't this technically piracy? That's an interesting and a very hot topic, by the way. But I will say, based on what we know right now, I am not aware of this vessel being sanctioned by the United States. And I don't believe it is sanctioned. So that's a little bit different than the first ship that we saw, which the U.S. claimed was a sanctioned vessel. This one right here, the Chinese supertanker, or at least alleged Chinese supertanker, does not appear to be sanctioned by U.S. officials. So that's a little bit different this time. So I'm not really sure what to make of this. I guess they're, like the enforcer mentioned, maybe they're performing a full blockade of Venezuela, and any ship that tries to come or go from Venezuela is going to get boarded and seized. But it's a bit of an interesting thing, especially with this particular instance.
Also, by the way, folks, nation cannot conduct acts of piracy. If anything, we conduct acts of marquee. But considering that the United States has declared some form of a blockade, this is most likely actions instilling a complete blockade. Although I will have to say, though, there is still an argument to be had there, whether it's piracy or not, because the United States of America announced that we would only be conducting a blockade against sanctioned tankers that were attempting to enter the waters of Venezuela. At this moment, we have not been able to find any sort of information confirming that this tanker itself actually fell under a sanction list anywhere in the world, even within the United States. So it appears that we have conducted a seizure of a vessel that did not have a active sanction put against it inside the United States, and we also haven't heard any confirmation by the U.S. government that they got a court order or a warrant to be able to seize the vessel. So at the moment, it appears that if we were to take that at face value, this is most likely the beginning of a complete and total blockade against the Republic of Venezuela, considering that the ship did not fall under a sanctions list from what we could tell.
But you know what's interesting though is previously the United States officials had come out and said that they were going to be blockading all sanctioned oil tankers and vessels. They did not mention seizing vessels that weren't under sanctions. So that seems to be breaking with their own statements. Actually, that they're seizing a vessel now, which seemingly doesn't have any U.S. sanctions placed on it. So I'm not really sure about this one here. I'm going to try to do some more research and research that vessel that we're seeing right here in the video. But I mean, if there's no sanctions on it, I mean, that's a little bit wild.
It is pretty wild, and I also see a lot of people talking about this development at the moment. And I would have to say, as far as what I would know, this is quite a questionable action. And while we're continuing to watch the footage here, the reason why this is a questionable action, folks, is that this was a vessel that was directly operated by the People's Republic of China and carrying about 2 million barrels of crude that was bound for China, meaning that the Chinese had already purchased the oil and it was on way to China. That really doesn't extend into an issue with the Venezuelans. This is now a Chinese-Venezuelan issue, meaning that the Chinese have been directly provoked by this action. You know, even being a pro-American, I can tell you all up front, the Chinese are going to be provoked by this action, which now means that the Chinese are going to be getting directly involved against the United States of America in the Venezuelan situation, which is not a good move to make. Even if we wanted to blockade the area, it's not a good idea to give the People's Republic of China direct ammunition to shoot at us with by us seizing one of their tankers. Now we could see the U.S. tankers or vessels that are operating on the behalf of the United States in East Asia could also be seized by the People's Liberation Army Navy, possibly for our support for Taiwan or other actions. Whenever an action is made, there can always be a reciprocal action by the other state actor who has had action taken against them by us. And this, in terms of foreign policy, could be greatly destabilizing the situation within East Asia, although this action was entirely aimed, when it was made, at dealing with a situation inside of the Americas.
Now, the one thing that would change the calculus here with seizing this vessel is if the vessel was carrying Venezuelan crude oil on board the ship, which right now I'm not entirely sure if it was. That's what we're not very clear about. But if it was carrying barrels of Venezuelan crude, despite it being a Chinese vessel of sorts, that would actually change it a bit, because even though technically the oil would then be owned, or at least I believe it would be owned by the ship's owners at that point, then we would be looking at something different, because Venezuelan oil is actually heavily sanctioned, and the U.S. sanctions not only the oil, but also ships or any vessels involved in its trade. So that may make it a little bit more of a gray area in that case, if it was carrying Venezuelan oil on board.
That would be true. And of course, folks, we're trying to figure out as much on this as possible as we can today as well. And we've been trying to look into it. But I would be honest with you all, this is not an act of piracy, but it is something that is going to be, as far as foreign policy goes, incredibly questionable. Right now, just to once again put this into perspective for folks who may not be understanding this, we only have so many resources that we can stretch so far around the world militarily to take actions against certain groups. And right now, our number one priorities are the Russians, the Iranians, and the Chinese in direct confrontations with them. We've now made Venezuela into a situation that we cannot walk away from and we cannot avoid, and we have gotten involved in seizing a Chinese tanker today carrying oil to China, which, regardless whether or not we have a right to do that with the sanctioned oil on board, this is directly implicating the Chinese in the actions that we're taking and is going to be getting them involved in further complicating the situation. If we wanted to deal with Venezuela, it would have been a lot better to deal with them by just starting bombings on them and then moving on into their country immediately without trying to mess with any assets of another country like China, especially considering the amount of trade relations that we have with them at the moment, and also considering the high tensions that we have within East Asia with the Chinese. Not only that, but with the relationships with the Japanese currently, that could kick off into a whole other war to where we are having to try and fight Venezuela, and then we're also having to try and fight China in East Asia, and then we may also be seeing that a war with Russia starts here soon, and we're literally fighting a three-front war in 3 different areas with the same amount of resources that we had to divert to any one of them if they happened at one individual moment. So it's not an incredibly good move, in my opinion, to have conducted this action today. It would have been a lot better to make this cut and short, simple and sweet is the best way to put it, and to just go into Venezuela, start overthrowing the government on the ground, and just leave it at that instead of allowing for other countries to have a door into the situation like the Chinese have already been trying to build up through their statements by their foreign ministry. And now we're literally giving them an open door to walk right into the middle of the situation and act like they have an invested stake in how it goes. A lot of people are talking about what the People's Republic of China's response is going to be. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that at the moment? And what are you thinking about that as well?
All right. So now that we've seen the U.S. in the video that we just saw board and seize an alleged Chinese supertanker near Venezuela, will China react strongly to the seizure? 56% said China will only protest diplomatically, while 23% said yes, China will react very strongly, and 15% said China is going to let this one slide. So I will admit, right now was a bit of an interesting time to pick on a Chinese supertanker because while, once again, we don't know all the details yet, it could be that maybe the supertanker was carrying Venezuelan oil, which would change things a little bit, but we don't know that for a fact right now. So the block is hot, as they say right now, because the U.S. just approved an $11 billion military aid package to Taiwan, which stirred the hornet's nest up in China really, really badly. The Chinese are extremely pissed off right now, and this might be the feather that breaks the camel's back. Not saying it will be necessarily, but they're taking a risk by once again poking China again right after that major escalation with the $11 billion going to Taiwan. So, to me, I'm not going to say right now if I support the ship seizure or not because I don't know all the details about it. Right now, it's kind of still up in the air. It certainly is a little questionable, I will say that. But the timing is the concerning part, especially considering that China is very agitated at this very moment. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that there is a possibility that the Chinese are probably going to react strongly to this, because we do have to remember, folks, that there's a whole other can of worms, because now this is being involved in East Asia at the moment. There's a whole other can of worms that's going on in East Asia right now that we didn't weigh into the equation when we took this action today. Right now, our relations with the Chinese, or really the relations of the Western world with China, is fairly strained. They're threatening to kill the Prime Minister Takaishi of Japan because she made statements that they're going to defend Taiwan if the Chinese try and invade Taiwan, which has gotten the Chinese greatly incensed. On top of that, the United States has conducted a small show of force flight with the Japanese to show that we back them, although we haven't made any public statements clearly showing that. We've still made a symbolic action with the Japanese to show that we back them up. So right now, the Chinese already have a bone to pick with us over that. Secondly, they also have a bone to pick with us because we approved an $11 billion arms sale package to the Taiwanese that included a great deal of weaponry that's once again incensed the Chinese once more. So at the moment, they not only have a huge issue with Japan, which is our largest ally in East Asia economically, they also have a huge issue with us directly because we are continuing to support the Taiwanese. So right now, the Chinese are pissed, and they are going to try and find any realm of opportunity that arises to where they can have a legitimate issue and start to escalate on that to try and work off of that at the moment, because they're probably looking to try and up the United States one and really show us how, if they can. And right now, considering that we've already showed them up one by selling weapons to the Taiwanese in large amounts that they're absolutely hostile over, they're most likely going to take this action of the U.S. seizing their tanker today and go all out. The China will not go all out as in a full-on war, but they are probably going to diplomatically go on all out and start escalating heavily with us. And there's a lot of actions that they can take in East Asia that would have nothing to do with what's going on in the Americas, but it would be a direct response to what we're doing in the Americas and the seizure of this vessel today. The Chinese could start to seize and detain vessels of the United States or any other Western nation within the East China Sea, the South China Sea, the Yellow Sea, or even the Philippine Sea, because they could say, because the Chinese conducted an illegal seizure of our ship, we're going to conduct an illegal seizure of theirs. And they could start to conduct reciprocal actions, which would start to very much complicate the situation. Not only that, the People's Republic of China may respond by trying to implement further restrictions on the United States of America and our importation of Chinese refined rare earth metals, which they've already tried to leverage in the past. So at the moment, there is a decent amount of I guess you could say, reprisals that the Chinese could try and conduct against us. And I've just got to be honest with y'all, folks, I don't know why in the world we would even try and create an incident like this today, because it's best to try and keep the situation contained as best as possible. If we have an issue with the Venezuelan government, it's generally not a good idea to start messing with other countries' vessels in the area, because messing with vessels is one way to get people into a full-blown war, or to get things to the point of nearly being a full-blown war, truth be told.
Well, Well, me personally, I don't think that the Chinese are going to take it out directly on the United States, meaning us, because China wants to avoid that situation almost to the same degree that we want to avoid that. China and the United States going and fighting with each other, that is probably the worst possible war that could break out right now in late 2025. That would be probably the worst one when it comes to collateral damage and also direct damage as well. So they probably want to avoid that. But the risk here is this. With Taiwan being right off the coast of China, obviously, they're going to take it out on Taiwan, because that is essentially the U.S. interest in the region is right there in Taiwan, and China can just reach out with a slight touch and cause some severe damage if they chose to do so. So that's where the risk comes in to me. I think they will take it out on the Taiwanese if they choose to do so. They're going to do that. They won't directly attack anything the United States has, like, for example, our ships. They're not going to do that, but they will try to harm our interest, just like we're doing to their interest in Venezuela.
I would say that's definitely the case, and I also see someone saying, why are you saying the same stuff about China while saying U.S. and Europe should be more aggressive with Russia's shadow fleet? Because situations are nuanced. You don't sling a sledgehammer at every situation. We have no economic benefits from the Russian Federation, and we never will. Our largest trade value that we had with them annually before we inflicted sanctions on them was around $20 billion collectively to and from Russia every single year, which is basically nothing. And on top of that, the Russian Federation has made it clear that their territorial ambitions lie well beyond Ukraine, and they're already gearing and preparing for that war. And considering that we have no economic relations with them, and they're also threatening an economically significant area of the world for the United States, which is the European Union, that's why we should be far more aggressive in pushing the Russians. However, on the other hand, China is one of our larger trading allies, and while they're not the largest, they are quite significant, and we have seen it in the past. Tariff scares within the United States already tanked the economy before tariffs even went in place. Considering that we have a larger economic relationship with the People's Republic of China, and also due to the fact that they can conduct reciprocal actions against us and militarily do have the means of doing so within their regional area, and not only that, the economic ability to actually pose a more significant threat, we have to be more careful with how we approach that situation. The Chinese are openly an enemy of the United States, but that also does not mean that every enemy of the United States can be met with the same approach. We could walk into Iran and quite literally hold the entire Iranian government on a Nuremberg-style trial tomorrow, and there probably wouldn't be anything to come out of it. But if we deal with the Russians a little bit too hard, we could get into a possible tactical nuclear exchange at a minimum, and at worst, a complete strategic nuclear exchange. If we mess with the Chinese, we could see that major shipping lanes through the Pacific are greatly affected, if not completely destroyed, in the midst of that war, considering that right now we're kind of on the fritz, really, to figure out what we're actually wanting to do in the Pacific any longer, and we're also starting to prioritize a national defense strategy, which is possibly weakening our forces and their positioning around the entirety of the world, including in Indo-PACOM. For that reason, it's a different situation, and you have to deal with it a little bit more differently, and generally deal with it a little bit more carefully. Because while they're a complete enemy of the Republic, we have to also make sure that we're not going to be shooting ourselves in the foot to try and deal with the situation. You have to deal with it smartly. So this may have not been the best move, because we've created the Venezuelan situation as something we can't walk away from. And now, not only have we done that, because we already know if we walk off, the Chinese and the Russians are going to come in and they're going to try and support the Venezuelans out the kazoo to make sure that we really can't threaten them anymore in the future without them being well armed. If we walk away now, that would be the situation. Now we've seized the Chinese tanker, which allows for the Chinese to actually get directly involved in some form due to action being taken against them or one of their assets in what we're doing in Venezuela.
Yeah.
So that's the
situation. And also, we're not even sure what the fate of this ship is going to be at the moment, because the first ship that was seized by the United States forces in the area, as far as we know, based on the last report I heard, it sounds like they're taking that vessel, which was full of oil. I can't remember the exact number of barrels it had on board. They're taking that ship to Houston in Texas, and they're going to be unloading the oil there, and apparently the United States is going to be keeping it, at least according to what we're hearing. So we're not really sure what the fate of the super tanker here is going to be. It could be maybe the same thing. Maybe the USA takes it all the way up to Houston, unloads the oil, and maybe gives the ship back. We're really not sure yet. So that's a bit interesting right there. So I wonder if the U.S. is going to hold off on that with this one, since it does contain Chinese-owned oil, according to what we're hearing.
Yeah, it's going to be something for sure. But I got to be honest with y'all, folks. As far as dealing with the Venezuelans, now I will say this though, folks. There is going to come a day and a time where we actually have to start shooting at the People's Liberation Army someday in the future. It's going to be 2 years from now, or it's going to be about 4 years from now. But in that situation, time is actually on our side. And we do want to actually try and prolong that as long as we can, because the economic fallout right now is going to be extreme. And right now, American companies are reshoring out of China and elsewhere. We have to let those companies buy that time so that way when that war happens, the U.S. economy isn't getting completely obliterated along with theirs when that war starts. That's generally what we're trying to buy time for right now. Right now, if that war starts because of our absolutely unforeseen and absolutely rash actions in the Caribbean right now, we're going to be seeing that if we go to war with China, which is inevitable, the consequences on the home front are going to be far more serious than they would be later. So generally, it's more so a thing about time. We're definitely going to war with China at some point in the future, and they are an enemy of the United States of America. Those things are not up even for debate. That's just given hard facts. The one thing that is up to debate, however, is how much damage do we want to happen here in the United States? How many people are going to lose their jobs? How bad of an economic recession or a depression will we go in due to a complete cessation of trade with China? And it would be a far less of damage and an impact several years in the future when China actually attempts to invade Taiwan than it would be right now if we escalate this into a situation to where we get in a war with China when what we were really trying to do is try and mess with the Venezuelans. So I hope that addresses that the best I can, at least with the global strategic outlook and the current situation globally, because it's a fairly complicated one, and when you get into an interconnected web of different fronts within Southcom and Indo-PACOM pretty much getting intertwined, because we're getting them intertwined, it becomes a lot more difficult to unpack. But that's the basic rundown of why this may have been a very questionable action today. We'll have to see how the Chinese respond. If the Chinese respond with a diplomatic protest only, we dodged a bullet. If they start to escalate within the East Asian regions and they start to seize U.S.-flagged vessels or tankers or any other form of commercial vessel, shit's going to hit the fan. I can promise you all that. It's not going to go well at all. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that at least the best we can. And with that, we have also been able to hear out of Venezuela that apparently they have stated that Venezuela is receiving an offer of support from Iran to confront piracy by the United States. So the Iranians, according to the Venezuelans, are going to come and help them.
That sounds to be backing up the idea that the State Department was saying a short while ago that Iran has interest in Venezuela, which I've been saying before. I said I think there might be interest of like Hamas and Hezbollah inside of Venezuela, and the State Department seemingly confirmed that the other day. So for Iran to be offering to help combat the quote-unquote piracy, that seems to indicate they do have some very strong interest in Venezuela, which seems to back up the U.S. statements.
I would say possibly, but I think, I'll be honest with you, Mandy, I think the Venezuelans made that one up because Iran doesn't even have a navy that could make it around Africa to even get to Venezuela.
Oh, no. No, it's not. It's not about the Navy necessarily. It's about sending weapons from Iran to Venezuela to defend the country. I think that's what they're referring to as weapon shipments.
Maybe, but I mean, it would be it would be tough to say that though, because Iran would also have to try and get their own ships through the U.S. blockade to get them weapons. And saying that they're going to help Venezuela break the blockade would most likely mean that Iran would get involved in the maritime sense in helping the Venezuelans to escort ships through the U.S. blockade, is at least how I took it. And if I was taking it that way and it was correct, Iran's largest vessel is the Beyondor class, which is this one right here. And that thing is not making it to Venezuela.
What about that drone carrier that Iran had? You know, that busted looking thing that was like a former commercial shipping vessel they turned into like a drone carrier or something? It looked really bad, by the way, like tough.
The Shahed Bagheri is what it's called.
Oh, they don't even have a picture of it on Wikipedia. Oh, there it is. That's why they don't have a picture of it on Wikipedia. It's so ugly. They didn't want to disgrace their site. But that is bad. This, by the way, I believe by the reports, this was a former vessel that was used for cargo, I think, that they converted into this really homemade, janky looking thing here. So, I mean, I agree. Iran's Navy is basically non-existent, but I think they're referring to sending weapons through Russia, etc., to sort of support their ally in Venezuela.
Yeah, I would have to say, I think maybe that's what they do, but even still, this thing can't operate without an escort. It has to have an escort. There's basically no defensive weaponry on this thing. So if it tried to show up in the area and tried to do anything, it would get hit by an F-16 with a JDAM, and it would go to the bottom pretty quick, because it has basically no air defense systems on board, except for a couple of man pads that are mounted on mounts, and what appears to be a 3.5-inch gun at the bow, and maybe one at the stern, which isn't going to provide a lot for air defense. It doesn't have it doesn't have any form of a tracking radar system on board, from what we know. So it's literally a container ship that has a flight deck built on it to launch Shahed drones and other forms of drones that the Iranians currently use. So basically useless. And on top of that, this thing isn't nuclear powered either, so it would eventually have to refuel. So even this thing in the end would have to break the U.S. blockade and sail through it to get to a Venezuelan port, refuel, and then try and go back out to sea, and then it would have to break the blockade again to get out to sea to then help break the U.S. blockade. So I don't even think this thing could be used either. So if the Iranians were, even if the Iranians said that and they actually meant it, and they meant through naval support they were going to help break the blockade, that's not happening. That will never happen.
Also, by the way, that would be the most stupid strategic decision that Iran's ever decided in their life if they sent their ships, the few that they have, to Venezuela in our hemisphere of the world. I would imagine that the U.S. would probably take that opportunity to eliminate those vessels on the spot, because it's not like we're worried about retaliation from Iran. They really can't do anything to us except for, lob like wild statements back at us. So, I mean, that would be really stupid for them to send the ships all the way over here to South America.
Yeah, I would agree. That would be that would literally be a death wish for the Iranian Navy to do that. There's nothing they can do to even defend themselves, really, because they're poorly armed. But moving on from that, and out of that Venezuelan news, y'all can see it is quite an interesting development that is going on in the area over the course of the day. Moving on out of the hunt for Captain Crack Sparrow, though, and further on up and into the U.S. Capitol to cover all of our American news in one swoop, we were able to hear that some Russian, well, at least the U.S. Treasury delisted several Russian-related companies and individuals from its sanction list under EO 14024. From what we know, the listed entities that were taken off of the sanctions list were right here, which is quite interesting considering that very soon, at least according to current U.S. statements, if the Russian Federation shoots down another peace proposal, we're going to implement even further sanctions against them. So for some reason, while we're also alluding that that might be a possibility, we're actually taking several Russian-related companies off of the sanctions list right now. So a little bit interesting with that one. Moving on from that, we've also been able to hear that U.S. intelligence has confirmed something that is quite significant. And crazily enough, folks, it's something that we've been saying on the channel for a while now. It's like we know what we're talking about. But before we get into that, because that's about to be a bombshell piece of news that moves us into another major news segment for the night, I do have to say that we are very honored to know that so many people are here watching the show tonight. Currently, we have about 13.2 thousand people here, and I gotta thank you all greatly for watching so far. We still have a lot to go, and it's great to know that y'all are here to hear this major news tonight. And not only that, about 55,000 people have watched. It's soon to be about 60,000 or so in the first hour. We're entirely appreciative and very grateful to know that so many people continue to choose this channel to be your primary source of news, even as it seems that the world is getting quite strained and quite strenuous these days. We are always happy to know that we are the folks who get to cover the news for all of y'all and tell y'all what's going on around the world. And if y'all have really enjoyed it so far in our analysis, make sure to subscribe. We cover this news every single day, at least on night, 6 days a week at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, covering all of the major news and foreign policy and global developments that we can get from throughout the day. And we also make short war videos whenever there's enough news to cover in the middle of the day. But with that in mind, I do want to make sure to talk about something that is quite important. Very important, as a matter of fact, which is the news that the U.S. intelligence forces have put out today, or more so intelligence agencies, which would be the more proper term. We have been able to hear that according to information that has emerged today, the United States intelligence agencies are now confirming what Ukraine has been saying for years. They've generally been saying this for a while, but they reconfirmed it. Putin plans a full invasion of Europe to reestablish the lost territories of the USSR and its system of colonies. Generally, what they're trying to do is recreate the Russian Empire. But none of these plans can come to fruition without first occupying the state of Ukraine. This intelligence statement came out today. Generally was a story broken by Reuters, which is considered to be an incredibly reputable source of news by many, us included, as Reuters very rarely, if ever, gets a fact even close to wrong. The fact that this information came out today from Reuters is confirming to us that the intelligence agencies of the United States do have credible information and intelligence to be able to confirm that the United States of America is looking down the barrel of a new war with the Russian Federation, which is not only something that U.S. intelligence agencies have been stating, but multiple European nations, once again working off of the information provided by their own intelligence agencies, have been stating that for well over a year at this point. A war with the Russian Federation is practically inevitable, especially if the war in Ukraine goes swimmingly for the Russians and they generally achieve a great deal of what's going on within the state of Ukraine and their goals and ambitions, which they have stated currently. This is something that is incredibly concerning, and one thing that I've got to say is not really a great move to see. Now, there has been a lot of pushback against this article today, particularly by one person within the U.S. government, who has stated that Reuters and everyone here on the internet, I suppose us included, are apparently warmongers because we're saying that the Russian Federation actually is looking to have a war with us. You know, it's crazy, folks. There was actually a lot of people back in the late 1930s here in America that said that everyone who believed that Hitler was going to continue his wars to conquest the entirety of Europe were nothing but warmongers and liars. And I think, if I remember correctly, those people are looked at now as fools and idiots because nobody could have not foreseen that Hitler was going to invade the rest of Europe given the chance, considering that he literally wrote it down in his own autobiography, Mein Kampf, that was the plan. So it's not like it was hidden or anything. And on top of that, the Russian Federation has already made it clear just through the past week, through multiple statements from high-up government officials and representatives of their foreign ministry, that they are looking to reclaim lands that are historically Russian. Putin has even said that himself just 3 days ago. How in the world could we not see, and how in the world could U.S. intelligence not say, that the Russian Federation is going to be going well on beyond Ukraine? That is something that would be absolutely stupid if you did not say that at this point. The Russian Federation has quite literally said that earlier this week. We can even find the direct statement that the Russians made. And so, let me see here. I think it was this one, actually. It may have been last week. Let me go to last week's map. I'll get the actual marker for y'all, folks, because I don't want to say that and then leave y'all hanging. I will actually go to my last week's map and find that marker for y'all because it was in Moscow, and it was a direct statement that Putin had made. So let me go and get it. It would be this one right here. Now let's go to this map, and let's see here. It's probably one of these days. Let's see here. Russian statements. Let me check this one here really quickly. Oh no, that was about the peace deal. Let me see here. Tired of waiting. Russian sue. Warning issued. Stupid. Let's see here. I believe it's this one, actually. Let me make sure. Oh, that was about the Russian economy. Damn, man, where in the hell was that video of Putin saying that they were going to try and get back all their lands that were historically Russian? Because it's not in Moscow. So where in the world is it? Because
no, man, that's a tough ask on the spot because we retweet like thousands of tweets a week, so I'd have to go back and look close for that.
I'm trying to even find it on the map, and I can't find it on last week's map, so it had to have been the week before. But I don't want to have y'all sitting here forever now because I told y'all, let me go find it. It's probably on last week's map, and it isn't even on this one. But we actually wait a minute, hang on. Wait, I think he said that in New Delhi. Then that would have been on the week before map, but we'd have to go and look. But beyond that, you can go back and look at our streams. You can literally hear us read it off on air and see the clip for yourself on one of our prior streams where he said that they have an ambition to retake all of the lands that were historically Russian. That includes the
Luckily
Baltics.
Luckily for you, though, I am a Twitter master of sorts. I lurk around X way too much, so I've got it for you under our likes tab.
No way. Matthew is an absolute legend. He found it on the spot. So, here we are. This is the statement right here. So let's go get it and let's watch it. Because, you know, we've been told by, and I'll just name the person, we've been told by Tulsi Gabbard that we're warmongers because we say that the Russians...
we real quick want to emphasize this. She didn't say it to us directly. You'd have to go back and reference the statement, by the way. It was not speaking directly about us, just make that perfectly clear. Just making a blanket statement saying that the quote-unquote propaganda media was putting out things and they're warmongers, basically. So something along those lines. Did not mention us by name, though. Want to make that clear.
but generally insinuated that folks like us who say what we say on air would be something along the lines of deep state warmongers. Generally, it was what was insinuated to anyone who says that the Russians clearly have bad inhibitions or ambitions and want to proceed further on than Ukraine. So here's Putin saying this. When was this, Matthew? How many days ago was this? The 17th of December, so this was actually 3 days ago, and this is him saying this right here. So here's the clip.
Цели специальной военной операции, безусловно, будут достигнуты. Мы предпочитали бы делать это и устранить первопричины конфликта с помощью дипломатии. Если же противоборствующая страна, их зарубежные покровители от разговора по существу откажутся, Россия добьется освобождения своих исторических земель военным путем.
There it was right there. I mean, if you didn't believe it, he literally said that they'll re-achieve the recapturing of their historic lands by military means. That includes the entirety of the Baltics, a large part of Poland, the whole of Belarus, the entirety of Ukraine and Moldova, along with Finland. Russia's furthest extent of historical lands within Europe existed under the Russian Empire that lasted all the way up until 1917. That is the amount of land that they would have to control in Europe to regain their historic grounds that Putin is talking about. This has been talked about significantly by people like Alexander Dugin, who are advisors to Putin, who have stated that they need to recreate the Ruski Mir, and they need to regain the concept of some form of a imperial Russia that would exist that would be far grander and larger than anything that had existed before. That may also include claims pressed on Alaska as well, although we've never really seen those heavily pushed. Those have always been talked about and mentioned, at least from time to time. But it does make it quite clear, folks, the Russian Federation is looking to retake not just Ukraine, but a large area of Europe. Putin even said it just 3 days ago. How in the world could we be warmongers, or anyone for that matter, be warmongers by literally repeating what Putin's saying is that he wants to take the entirety of Eastern Europe for the large part, which also includes a great deal of NATO states. A lot of people are talking about the U.S. intelligence report that came out today, and they're talking about whether or not they believe it to be the truth. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
All right. So, according to reports that we're hearing, some unnamed U.S. intelligence officials are now warning that Putin intends to reclaim former USSR states that are now NATO states. And is that the truth? 72% said yes, the USA is finally admitting the truth, while 15% said no, it's just more fear-mongering, and 6% said the report likely isn't real. So, I mean, it doesn't take a genius. I mean, even a junior political analyst could look at this and say that obviously Putin's ambitions don't make very much sense if you look at it purely from a Ukraine standpoint. It makes a lot more sense if you look at it from a former Russian Empire standpoint that he basically wants to reclaim. So, all of Putin's actions, including his own words, indicate that he wants to retake and reform the Russian Empire in its entirety, and Ukraine's the start of that, but it's only the start. It's not the end of it. If he gets Ukraine, that only emboldens him to finish the job and go on to the Baltic states and even beyond that. So I don't know why they got the U.S. officials so triggered today that this alleged report came out. It seemed to really hit a nerve for some reason about this whole situation, which I'm really not sure why. So I would say we've been saying this for a long time, and if the report is true that U.S. intelligence does believe this, then they are finally admitting the truth. I'm with the 72%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'll be with the 72%. It's obviously telling the truth because we don't have to look far to see that the Russians are clearly going to expand this further than Ukraine. They're not only looking at taking the whole of Ukraine, they also want to take large parts of Poland and also the Baltics as well, along with Finland. That's the historical extent of their territory that they have, and if you look any depth into the Novorossiya concept, or the new Russia idea, or the Russian world, Ruski Mir as they call it, you would clearly see that in all of those ideologies, they claim that Russia deserves these lands and deserves to subjugate these different peoples within these areas because they're lesser than the Russians, and that the Russians owned these lands and ran it with an iron fist back in the day, and they're owed to do that again today. It is an absolutely insane concept, but it's the one that they subscribe to. It doesn't take a national intelligence director or a government position to be able to see that. You could literally see that with your eyes closed just by listening to Putin's mouth blabber on about Rinky-Dink the Wise and how great he was and how much land the Russians had at one point, and wherever a Russian soldier sets foot, that land's ours, and so on and so forth. It doesn't take a lot. So clearly, the United States is telling the truth by saying that this war is going to expand much farther. On top of that, if it wasn't going to expand much farther, then why in the world is every single European country screaming from the rooftops in the Bundestag, in the National Assembly, in the British Parliament, and elsewhere that war is coming and that the entirety of Europe has to be prepared because there's no way to avoid this? It's become obviously clear the Russians are going to invade the Baltics or elsewhere here within the future. If that wasn't true, why in the world would every European country be ramping up their military spending to try and meet this upcoming threat?
Yeah, that's just because the Europeans are warmongers. That's all. The Europeans want to waste their money on defense because they just love to blow money in Europe. That's the position of the people saying that Europe is warmongering. Is Europe's just blowing money because they're spendthrifts. They love to spend it. That's all. And it's you know why Europe spends the money on defense, because they're the ones who are actually going to get attacked. That's why they're spending the money. That's why they're taking it seriously. The United States, we have the very good privilege of being separated from Russia, so we get to be across the world and away from that mess, and Europe does not. So that's the difference. Europe has to take it seriously, and they have to spend the money. Why do certain U.S. officials believe that Europe is warmongering when Putin is out there saying that he wants to devastate the area and take it over? It's insane.
You know what's even more stupid, folks, is that the administration has been saying all the way through its campaign last year to be elected that the Europeans are weak, they're stupid, they're sniveling, and they're pacifists to the point of stupidity. Now that's completely changed. Now all the European states are saying we're definitely going to be in a war, so we need to be ready for this war, and we need to increase our military spending. So now we're saying, instead of them being peace-loving, weak pacifists like we were saying prior, now we're saying that they're warmongering, overspending on their military, and they're absolutely stupid because clearly the Russians wouldn't want to go to war with them. He's literally done a complete 180 on what the administration is saying about the Europeans and what they are and what they think. And it's like so apparently one of these statements is untrue because both of them can't be. They literally oppose each other as far as the end result you get. Either the Europeans are warmongers or they're pacifists that are now realizing that their life of pacifism can no longer continue due to external circumstances like a Russian invasion. Obviously, it's that one.
And also, it's like, wasn't there a bunch of yapping? I don't know if you just mentioned this or not, because I was looking at the chat, but wasn't there a whole bunch of yapping out of the United States about the NATO countries need to start spending at least the 5% of their GDP on national defense spending? That was the U.S. saying that. Like, we were telling the Europe that they weren't contributing enough to the collective defense of NATO. They weren't carrying their end of the bargain. And that's why we were threatening to leave NATO a short while ago. So now all of a sudden it's a problem that Europe's spending too much money on it. Now Europe is warmongering by preparing for war that Russia's going to launch in the next few years. I mean, there's no winning. Like, there's no winning here when it comes to like actually trying to protect NATO interest. The playbook just keeps changing. Like, the goalpost keeps getting put farther and farther back every time they try to meet a different guideline that the U.S. puts on Europe. Then it changes again, and now Europe's still the bad guy. The bottom line is, in the United States view currently, Europe is always going to be the bad guy. Europe just needs to understand that you're going to be villainized no matter basically what you do at this point, which is pitiful because Europe is our ally. Now, if we don't have Europe, then the United States is by itself. So, I mean, I just don't understand it.
I don't understand it either at all, either. It's just making no sense. Because back when they weren't spending a lot on their military, and they were usually only spending around 2% or a little bit over, we said that they were weak pacifists and bitches. So now they're spending a lot on their military because war is coming, so there's really nothing else that they can do rather than prepare for that. So now we're saying that they're warmongering, like bloodlusted people who just want nothing but to watch people die and suffer, although we didn't say that until war started to come around the corner with the Russians. I'll be entirely honest with y'all, folks. If you listen to the current administration for any advice on foreign policy, you're going to be absolutely amiss, because whatever the actual situation is, they're just going to say the opposite. So when the spending is low because there isn't a clear and evident threat, they're going to say that the spending should be through the roof, like they're at war with Nazi Germany back in 1942. And then if a war is imminent and they start increasing spending, then you're a warmongering sadist that loves to watch blood get spilled, and clearly you ought to disarm yourself so that way the Russians have an easier time walking into into your country. There's literally no way to win at this point. It's absolutely stupid, and it's ridiculous to watch this go on. And then it's even more ridiculous, folks, to watch that when this intelligence news comes out, it's just straight up facts, folks, that this war is coming around the corner and there's really no way we can avoid it. Then the National Intelligence Director wants to come out and start chastising people and the intelligence report that came out that Reuters cited for saying that war is inevitable and coming around the corner. So now you can literally just say, war is coming, we know that for sure, and then they'll even call you a liar at that and say that you're a warmonger because you're just facing the facts of what's going on. If these people, folks, were in charge in 1941 when Pearl Harbor got bombed, they probably would have told you that the Japanese were just trying to have a peaceful visit to Pearl Harbor and they accidentally, dropped their luggage or something. And really, to be honest, we ought to be giving everything in the Pacific to Japan because that would only make sense. I mean, clearly they're a good country with good intentions, and it's not like they're going around genociding the Chinese in East Asia during that time. That's what they would have said. Or they would have told you that you're a warmonger for saying that Hitler clearly has ambitions further than Austria and the Sudetenland. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, the good news is, though, we don't need a national intelligence report to know that Russia's intentions are obviously much bigger than Ukraine. If you've been following the war since it began, which we have here on the channel, then you'll know that Putin's ambitions are definitely much larger than what's being said by the U.S. right now. So there's leaks here and there that eventually leak out from the bottom surfaces, I guess you could say, saying that once again Russia is going to invade NATO states. Europe says it. You'll occasionally hear it from the United States here and there when it leaks out. It's just, you don't have to be a genius to see it. So we don't need the report. We can just see it based on Putin's actions and his own words.
Yeah, I mean, the intelligence agencies had a really easy job this time, folks. They literally just watched the official announcements and statements that Putin was making at national conferences and just went, oh, yeah, he's clearly saying he wants to go to war, so he clearly wants to go to war. I mean, what better proof can you have rather than him literally saying it out of his mouth? There's like people back in the day going, oh, Germany clearly won't invade Poland. Although in the damn book that Hitler wrote, he literally explained that he wanted to take the entirety of Eastern Europe, including the Soviet Union. He literally explained it in his book. Like people back then would open up Hitler's stupid book and go, look, it says it right here. He wants to clearly go beyond Austria and the Sudetenland. And people would sit there and go, oh, you're just stupid. Clearly he doesn't. He's a peace-loving man. He's just, annexing countries because he loves peace so much, which makes no sense. And then they found out. And right now we're on the path for people to unfortunately find out again because people in the administration just won't wake up and smell the roses, which is clearly showing that we're going to war, and there's nothing that can be done to avoid that, and sticking your head in the sand and lying about it and pretending like that's not going to be happening isn't doing anyone any favors. It's only going to get more Americans killed needlessly when this thing ends up being worse off than what it could have been, which we might have been able to avoid if we act strongly and we act resolutely at this moment. With that, I hope that addresses that the best I can. But with that in mind, folks, we are going to be moving on to the news that corroborates that in Europe in a moment. But before we get to that, I do want to make sure that we take a couple of questions from the chat. So we're going to take 3 of them, just so that way everyone can have a bit of a halftime break for snacks, maybe a little sip of water, maybe a restroom break, or some people call that going to the toilet. And then we'll continue on with the news. So, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so jumping into our first super chat of the night, this one goes to none other than Bobby, also known as LC39A, who's a longtime channel legend, by the way, of course. Hey! And thank you very much, Bobby, for throwing in that usual massive $100 support. And that is wild support yet again, and we do appreciate that. He said, another day, another peso. And also, Bobby, I don't know if anybody's ever suggested it or not, but you may want to consider changing your name to Jeff Pesos, perhaps. That might be a good name right there, honestly. I'll be honest with you. If you did that and you changed your life, if I could call you Mr. Pesos, that would make my night. Honestly, it would. But thank you, seriously, Bobby, for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
I got to say an unbelievably massive thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, Bobby. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to say a huge shout out to Jeff Pesos for that incredible support and helping to have us get a couple of pesos to keep the days going, or the daysos going, I guess is the best way to try and make it rhyme. But a humongous thanks to you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. So a tremendous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our second one goes to Hackneys and Rhinelanders, who's also a longtime channel legend. And thank you very much, Hackneys, for that $100 support. And we do appreciate that very, very much. And they said, for the coffee fund and the best news around.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, Hackneys and Rhinelanders. Incredible thanks to you so much for the support for the Coffee Fund. Coffee beans keep this show going every single day, as a matter of fact, folks. We have a nice cup of coffee before the show every night. Fresh beans, that is, and those are the good beans. And I gotta say, humongous thanks to you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on rolling and helping to support our Coffee Fund so that way we can be caffeinated and attentive to be able to get through this news, research it, and cover it every single night. 6 days, or really 7 days a week, 365 days a year, except for Thanksgiving and 2 days for Christmas. And so with that, a humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, folks, we're going to be on to the final question of the segment, and then moving on into the rest of the news.
All right, and our last one goes to Linda DeSoliners, who puts in a $70 support. And thank you very much, Linda, as well, for supporting the channel in a very, very big way. And Linda said, Merry Christmas. And I've been watching a long time and hope you get a very snowy Christmas. And we just dug out from 3 feet of snow this week in northern Alberta, Canada. So I'm good.
I gotta say, that's a lot of snow right there. We haven't really had a lot of snow down here in Salt Lake. It's kind of it's snow. We have snow-capped mountains, but we really don't have any snow down here in the valley. And everyone's starting to get to the point here where they're like, "Dang, where's the snow?" I actually went and got some food today from a place, and like the folks working there were like, "Yeah, the snow hasn't come yet. It just doesn't really feel like Christmas without snow." And I was like, dang, apparently we came here during a very mild winter this year, among many other mild things. Oh, man. But beyond that, big thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, all the way up there from Canada, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible. We wouldn't be able to keep it running. And a big shout out to all the folks up there in Alberta. Because Alberta is actually rat-free, folks. They take pride in that in the province of Alberta in Canada. Whenever a rat is spotted, they actually make a very big deal out of that in the local news within the province of Alberta, and they start literally a rat manhunt to eliminate any rats that may have made it into the area. It's a really weird thing that they have going on, but it's good that they have a point of pride in making sure that the Alberta region is rat-free. But with that, folks, it is time for us to move on into the rest of our news for the night, which we still have significant news to go. Moving us on into Europe, we have been able to hear that at the moment, the Institute for the Study of War, which we heavily respect, they follow us, we follow them on Twitter, has made it incredibly clear that the situation is quite strenuous. 3 Russian border guards, this is the Institute for the Study of War statement, by the way, the 3 Russian border guards briefly crossed into Estonian territory on the 17th of December. The ISW continues to assess that Russia is intensifying its covert and overt attacks against Europe and that Russia has entered Phase 0, the informational and psychological condition setting phase, to prepare for a possible NATO-Russia war in the future. The December 17th event is the first instance ISW has observed of uniformed Russian personnel crossing over into NATO territory since the start of Russia's Phase 0 effort in September of 2025. The Institute for the Study of War is even saying that the Russians are laying out the groundwork to start a war with NATO. If everyone's saying it, it can't be wrong. I mean, like, everyone who's actually in the analysis world, us included, have been saying that this is coming around the corner. Everyone can't be wrong except for the National Intelligence Director. That would be pretty hard to do. Like, that would just be incredibly difficult to do. If anyone can see it out there in the world, including the Institute for the Study of War, which is a think tank that works out of Washington to be able to provide well-researched and thought-out answers to the government and the public alike on what's actually going on in foreign policy, it doesn't take rocket science, folks, to figure this out. It's quite obvious, and the Institute for the Study of War is filled with a lot of intelligent people that can see the obvious, which is something that currently it appears that the U.S. government cannot see. Moving on out of that, though, we did hear that in Tallinn, meanwhile, an explosion has actually occurred within Tallinn. From what we know, an explosion occurred in the Ulamiste shopping center in Tallinn after a trash can detonated. One person was injured and taken to hospital. The mall has been evacuated as rescue teams and deminers are working on the site. Authorities say the cause is unknown, but we understand that a full-scale investigation will be launched afterwards, and they will mostly be trying to find the root cause of why this explosion occurred and who actually conducted it. But at the moment, it is quite a mystery. And I say that sarcastically. Moving into Moscow, we have also been able to additionally hear that apparently the Russians are preparing for martial law. which is something that's quite important in its own self. The Russian Ministry of Defense has initiated the formation of defense headquarters on the territory of constituent entities and municipalities of the Russian Federation for the period of the introduction of martial law in them. This follows from the relevant draft federal law, which is published on the portal of Draft Regulatory Legal Acts. The draft federal law on amendments of the federal law on defense was developed in order to create unified interdepartmental coordinating bodies in the constituent entities of the Russian Federation, in the territories, parts of the territory in which martial laws have been imposed, and in municipalities on which the territory's martial law has been imposed, the explanatory note to the document stated. It is specified that the bill was developed in taking into account the experience of the functioning of the defense headquarters of the Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republics, Zaporizhia, and Kherson regions, which are currently under occupation. That was reported by TASS, which is a Russian agency. This is making it a little bit clear that the Russians are still working on the background and preparing for a war with NATO. You see, they currently have these forms of martial law headquarters within the occupied areas of Ukraine: Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia, Kherson, and Crimea. They're now extending this to the rest of the country, particularly Western Russia, along the NATO border. Why in the world would they do that, considering that appears to be a wartime action in areas that are embroiled in active fighting on a front line, if they weren't planning on going to war with NATO? This is a clear action for preparation of a war, and it is something that is making it incredibly clear that war is coming. You know, I'm not trying to fearmonger here, folks. I'm just stating the reality of it. War is coming with the Russians. The government should be operating off of that mindset, because that's the facts. This isn't something that's up to debate or up to question. Every single action that they are taking is the same action the Japanese led up to the bombing of Pearl Harbor, the same actions that the Germans took up to the actual war with Poland, which started World War II in Europe. It's the same actions that were taken by multiple other countries that have gone to war, including us. When the Civil War was about to begin, martial law was implemented in this country, and we started to roll out martial law headquarters and military outposts throughout most of the northern United States in the Union during that time to be able to account for the beginning of a war, a civil war, and the implementation of martial law. This is a historical standard. Whenever a country is going to war, they start laying out all of the preparatory groundwork and infrastructure necessary to make sure that a semblance of order continues on even in the midst of a major war that may very much threaten the existence of the Russian Federation itself. This action is evident of that, and it appears that a lot of people are talking about what this means. Why in the world are the Russians setting up these martial law headquarters throughout the country, even reported by Russian state media, which is TASS? And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
All right, so now that we're seeing this right here, the reports are saying that Russia is preparing for martial law, and the big deal is they're actually making steps to make that happen by creating new FSB headquarters around the country, apparently operated in part by the Russian Ministry of Defense, getting ready to allegedly suppress dissent inside of Russia. So what are your thoughts? 48% said Russia expects civil unrest very soon, while 45% said it's prepped for a war with NATO, and 4% said it seems like something normal that's being made into something else. So I would personally say I'm with the 47%. I think this is less about prep for a war with NATO. This is more about the Russian people getting to their breaking point, and Putin is preparing for the worst, which is the Russian civilians trying to oust him internally inside of Russia, because they are specifically setting up new places here where they can employ soldiers, not against NATO necessarily, but against their own people in case they start speaking out. So I think this is about civil unrest. And it would seem to be a valid concern for Putin, because right now the Russian economy is on its last leg right now. And also there's a lot of withdrawals happening from Russian banks, and every single indicator inside of Russia is chaos. So when do the Russian people break? Nobody's really sure. And Putin is playing it safe by preparing for the worst, by preparing for martial law. So I'm with the 48%. It definitely involves mainland Russia. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that it's really more so a mix of the two, because usually whenever there's a serious situation that happens, like an outbreak of war with, say, NATO, that could start to cause a massive amount of civil unrest, or it could be economic fallout that's already happening at the moment that could cause civil unrest. Either way, this is an action that usually would indicate that a country is about to be going to war with someone. Like, for example, when Nazi Germany started its war with Poland, martial law was generally declared within the areas near to the active front line. In the Soviet Union, when they got invaded during Operation Barbarossa, martial law was also declared, and the NKVD started to set up headquarters and facilities to be able to put down any public dissent and maintain order until the last minute when the Soviet Union would lose those areas of land due to the German advance. You would see the very same thing in France and Britain during the Second World War as well, and while in the United States of America, martial law was not declared throughout the Second World War, we still got somewhat close and would still implement some form of facets of public control or maintenance of public order at all costs, even without the declaration of martial law. So I would say that this is highly indicative of some sort of an action that will lead to an outbreak of war, because they're already trying to prepare to lay out the groundwork that if people protest against that war, they're going to be put down. If the economic situation gets worse, they're going to be put down. And if any situation arises that will threaten the stability of the Russian Federation, which will become incredibly unstable in the midst of a major war with NATO, they'll be able to put down any dissent. So I would say that it's really more so a blend of the two than one.
Yeah, it could be maybe a blend, but also another thing that leads me to believe that Putin does expect civil unrest is because we've covered this over the last 2 weeks. The Russian podcasters, the people in the public sphere inside of Russia who usually blindly support Vladimir Putin, have been recently coming out and making statements saying that Putin was lied to and the war was caused by lies, and they're blaming the current regime inside of Russia, which is Putin's regime, for lying and getting them into a war that they're failing at. So that is something we haven't seen during pretty much the entire course of the war so far, which indicates that if the public speakers inside of Russia are even saying it, then there must be some rumblings amongst the civilian population that we're not really hearing about on the media yet, that's probably taking hold right now. So if they're feeling comfortable to do that, and once again, remember, usually the cost of speaking out publicly like that, usually Putin comes after you really, really badly if you do something like that. But these guys appear to be mounting in numbers in the podcasting sphere inside of Russia, which is a bad sign for Putin.
It certainly is a bad sign, and it appears that things are only getting worse. In the meantime, we've also been able to hear some additional news today that apparently, according to Zelensky, the general that confirmed, General Kuzovlev, who reported to Putin about the occupation of Kupiansk, has disappeared. So apparently he's been offed, or he's just been removed from his position and put in prison. One hell of a meme right there.
Oh, man, that's crazy.
Man, I'm not going to lie. That was kind of like a jump scare when I clicked on this. I just ignored it and just kept belting out the news. But I was like, damn, that is really eye-grabbing down there. But nevertheless, it appears that this general has either disappeared or he's been shot because he lied to the Russian government about taking Kupiansk. And now it's clear they completely lost the city. They don't hold any of it anymore at all. This is the current situation within the city. And while there are some Russians encircled within the center of the city, that's not holding the city, and the Russians did not take the city. They're surrounded in the city, and they lost the city, which is the complete opposite of what was reported to the Russian government. So that general has apparently disappeared, according to all accounts that the Ukrainians were able to find. Moving on out of that, though, we do have to move on out of Europe, at least for a moment, to make sure that we cover some other major news that went on in Southeast Asia and the Middle East. We're going to be clumping these two segments into one tonight and kind of just blowing through it really quickly because there's been no major developments in the casino war at the moment, but there is still some action to see down there. We saw what the Thai Navy was actually doing at sea last night, which was apparently firing 76 millimeter autocannons from their vessels. It appears to be some form of a corvette, or maybe even a smaller frigate or a minesweeper. Well, actually, a corvette or a minesweeper or some sort of a coastal patrol vessel, but they were firing their 76 millimeter at Cambodian positions along the coasts. And we're going to be muting that. I thought that was actually the sound of the ship when we first started the first clip. But there's the shot. And there it goes off into the distance to go hit a Cambodian position.
Also, it seems like the U.S. decided to opt out of this war once the ceasefire claim was proven to be false. The U.S. seemed to just say, all right, well, we're going to head out. I haven't heard a single thing out of the United States ever since that embarrassing moment where the U.S. tried to claim that they had brokered a new ceasefire, and it turned out not to be true.
Someone ought to go up and ask the president how the peace is going here. Did he secure peace in Southeast or not? And see what the answer is. But moving on from that and on up into the area near Krong Poi Pet, we also were able to see some airstrikes conducted by Thai Air Forces today, including their F-16s.
Mau với tía. Mau với. Mà tay về nó với tía, nó với tía rồi. Đây phải dắt tiền small nó chặt chanh đâu, con thấy à? Hồi mấy chặt chanh đấy không? Tiền small anh cho nó.
Man, that's the sounds and the sights of successful foreign policy, folks. We not only achieved a peace in Thailand and Cambodia, we also achieved a far more destructive and wider-reaching war as a result of the failed peace that we negotiated in the area. Truly an amazing feat, and something that only geniuses would have been able to foretell. It's not like we were saying that on the channel for months, that this was clearly going to start again before the end of the year. You know, we wouldn't know that. We're just some YouTubers. But moving on from that, we also got another clip showing us that there were more airstrikes being conducted within the area. That's actually a duplicate, and a shorter one at that. We're going to get rid of that one. Moving on up into the border area, we also saw that Thai forces have moved across the border in another area and have taken ground. Here's a clip of the Thai forces inside of Cambodia taking ground. There they are.
TANKER 后面还
Apparently there's Sangha. I didn't know that.
Ew.
That's news. We also saw another clip of that right here. Take a look at this. That is the Thai army, and they're in Cambodia, at least a little bit at the moment. We also got to see a Cambodian soldier firing an RPG-7V, or generally a Type 69, in this clip right here, apparently in an indirect fire role, which I don't really know how effective that would be. We're going to have to mute that because apparently they're playing smooth jazz from Hobby Lobby. We can see them aiming the RPG and firing it.
He's walking off like he's in a movie.
Man, look at him. He's just kind of wandering around. He's thinking about it, pondering what he just did. He seems to be somewhat perplexed. Nice J's, by the way. You can't crease those. Those are flip-flops. But anyways, moving on from that, and out of the Thai-Cambodia War, or aka the Casino War, it's still going on. Moving on up into the Islamic Republic of Iran, we also been able to hear that apparently there's some unusual activities in the country, but I do want to say this, folks. Apparently, the president is going to be briefed here in the future by the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, on the possibility of launching new strikes against Iran's nuclear and missile programs. So currently, Netanyahu is saying, Mr. President, you know, my favorite thing is Burger King, and I think that we need to drop some burgers on the Iranians, King. And so right now, while that's being said, we're now hearing that apparently there's some unusual activities within the IRGC aerospace forces, including coordinated drone, missile, and air defense movements beyond normal patterns, which are prompting heightened monitoring, sources tell Iran International. Meanwhile, we've also heard that apparently, according to a report by NBC, left unchecked, Iran's ballistic missile production could rise to as many as 3,000 missiles per month, according to a source with direct knowledge of Israel's plans and former U.S. officials briefed on the matter. So it does appear that at the moment there may be another war coming with Iran, because what better, folks, than to get ourselves in a possible confrontation with the Chinese over Venezuela, and then also have to go fight in Iran, and then also possibly have to fight a war with the Russians, all at the same time. So actually, folks, that would be a four-front war right there, because we would be fighting in East Asia, we'd be fighting in Venezuela, and in Iran, and also in Europe. 4 fronts. I don't think we've done that except for World War II. Anyways, moving on from that, it's time for us to get on out of the Middle East. But before we get on out from the Middle East, I do want to make sure that we ask you all about this question here. A lot of people are actually talking about that upcoming briefing that the Prime Minister of Israel is going to be giving to the President of the United States about conducting more strikes on the Islamic Republic of Iran. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that? What are you thinking about that as well?
All right. So Iran is getting back on the menu again. It's like the weekly special. They've put Iran flambe as the weekly special. So Israel is trying to basically convince the United States to order the special, and they will be briefing the U.S. officials on new strikes against Iran. And also, we're hearing from intel reports that Iran is beginning some strange military movements, in addition to ramping up their missile production that we've seen on satellite. So it appears that Iran is doing it, by the way. It does not sound like something that's being manufactured just to justify situation. We have seen satellite images that we've shown here on stream as well, showing large amounts of rocket structures that are being produced by Iran. So let's see here. About 43% said Israel will strike with U.S. support, while 36% said Israel strikes without the U.S. blessing, and 15% said the U.S. will actually help Israel strike Iran with U.S. jets. And I would personally say that if Israel is going to be striking Iran, I have a strong feeling that Israel will likely convince the United States to go back in and strike those nuclear sites at the same time. Because if there is an opportune time to do that, it would be during an escalation that Israel starts. So I'm actually with the 14%. I'm with the minority this time. I believe that the U.S. will be helping Israel strike Iran, and we may even send back the B-2s, depending on what type of intelligence reports comes out between now and the strikes. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that I'm also with the 14% as well. I think the United States is going to get directly involved in conducting strikes against the Islamic Republic of Iran because of the position that we are in with the Israelis, and also due to the fact that whether or not we have any strategic interest involved, which we actually do in the situation, we would probably support the actions nonetheless, just because, basically. So, while wars are terrible, and this is the presidency at peace, we are probably going to be getting back to bombing the Iranians quite soon, truth be told, which we've already done earlier this year. So, we'll see. We'll wait and see, but that's what I'm thinking as well, along with Enforcer Matt. I think the U.S. will get directly involved in conducting strikes against the Islamic Republic of Iran because we did that last time, so there's no reason to believe that we wouldn't do that again. But moving on.
But you see, this time though, I will say I detect the frustration, but at the same time though, I would still 100% support the U.S. going back and finishing the job with the Iranian nuclear sites. I would 100% support that because if Iran is developing missiles like we've seen on satellite, they're building missiles by the dozens, and once again they're back to developing, at least allegedly back to developing nuclear technology, then the threat still exists. We didn't properly deal with the threat the first time. So while the first B-2 strikes were a good attempt to try to stymie the problem, it hasn't been properly stopped. So it was inevitable. We would have to go back, and this may be the opportunity to go back. It's just unfortunate, though, that it is taking place at the exact same time that a war with Venezuela might be breaking out, because we don't want to get too many things started in too many different places, because once again, we still have the looming issue of Russia and Ukraine and potentially a NATO conflict, and we don't want to get too many fires going at the same time. But we still need to deal with Iran. It's something that we can't ignore.
Oh, I wasn't frustrated with that. Like, I think you're misunderstanding my frustration. The reason why I'm sounding frustrated, because now I have to explain to folks so that way y'all don't think I'm frustrated over having to go deal with Iran, because we've been saying that we should be dealing with Iran. Well, I've been saying personally that we should be dealing with Iran the whole time we've been talking this year. But the thing that's frustrating, folks, is that we have to go deal with Iran while we're also trying to deal with Venezuela, which was something we did not have to deal with right now. And now we made that into a situation where the Chinese might get involved, meaning that Venezuela is now probably attached to the East Asian situation, meaning that we'll have to deal with probably an upcoming situation in East Asia and Venezuela at the same time. On top of that, U.S. intelligence is saying that a war is probably coming with Russia. And then on top of that, now that we've completely wasted our time and resources doing something that is a complete F-up from every degree with Venezuela, now we also have to go and deal with one of the pertinent, imminent threats to the United States, which is the Islamic Republic of Iran. In the midst of all that, and we're going to have to start stripping resources from elsewhere like Southcom to go deal with that. It's stupid foreign policy to the umpteenth degree. At this point, it is idiocy to a measure that cannot even be described anymore, folks, and it just gets me so damn frustrated, because I've been on the channel saying all year, folks, myself personally, we have three major concerns. Our number one concern, because it's the most imminent and pressing one, is the Iranians. Our second, near second concern is the Russians, because that's probably going to turn into a major war soon. And our third, very important concern is China, because they're probably going to start getting ready to invade Taiwan within the next 2 years in 2027. I've been saying that for ages. And once again, folks, I say China's the number 3 priority because it's probably going to happen at the earliest in 2 years when they try and invade Taiwan. But because of our Venezuelan dealings and the mess up that we've done today, now we've given the Chinese an actual moment to force us into a diplomatic confrontation that would probably turn into that war in 2 years right now. So now we're going to sit here and get involved in this way earlier than we had to, and way earlier than it would have happened normally, which would have bought us a lot of time to do things in our benefit, because we wanted to be big and ballsy with the Venezuelans and go seize a Chinese ship today. I can guarantee y'all that the Foreign Ministry of China is going to be putting out some very aggressive statements, probably tomorrow, probably even right now, about what happened with Venezuela today. I'm quite sure. If they don't, I'll be shocked, and I'll say that we were quite lucky that they didn't make a big issue out of that. Otherwise, we've absolutely thrown all of the timetables off, and we're dealing with a situation to where the Axis powers now control the tempo of what's going on, not us.
Yeah, let's lay out the hotspots real quick for a second, because when you were mentioning that right there, I was thinking of all the different hotspots right now that the U.S. is currently having to think and deal about right now. We have the Syria ISIS situation. That's a brand new one. That one literally popped up within the last week. So we've got that going on in Syria. We've obviously got the Venezuela thing going on. That's a big one. It's been going on for months. Then we've got Iran. That one's been going on for years. So that's still going on. That's 3 right there. Then we've got Taiwan, and we're poking the hornet's nest right now by seizing Chinese vessels and also sending huge aid packages. Even though I support the aid package, it's still a provocation. So we have to keep that in mind. So that's 4 major hotspots. Then we've got Ukraine we're still dealing with. That'll likely be going on for many more years. And then we have the Baltics that are currently being hybrid attacked by Vladimir Putin left and right, and their soldiers crossing over the border. So that is a total of 6 major hotspots all at the same time that could break out severely at any point. So, that's a lot of them. You don't want that many on your plate at one time, so you really got to pick and choose carefully and prioritize. And Venezuela is probably at the bottom of that tier list out of those 6 hotspots right there.
But also now we've made it into the number 1 situation, because now the Chinese are probably going to be getting involved. And anyways, even if this didn't happen today, if we just walked off because it really is a low priority issue, if we walked off now, the Chinese are going to just start sending in container ships filled with weaponry to give to the Venezuelans. So that way next time we try that, they're actually well armed, and it becomes something that we really have to seriously consider if we want to get involved in having to deal with that or not. So at this point, we made it in something we can't walk away from, which is even better. It's really the icing on the cake at this point, because if we walk away from it, we've basically been defeated without even fighting at that point with what's going to happen in the future.
Yeah, I would say so, honestly. Also, by the way, for the people saying that we forgot Thailand, I'll be honest with you, folks. I don't consider Thailand a hotspot, me personally. Thailand and Cambodia can fight. Like, if they want to hate each other and fight, then, I hate to see it, obviously, but they can do whatever they want. They're not nuclear armed. So if they keep fighting, and unfortunately it goes that way, that's not the U.S.'s fire to put out. And also, the U.S. has bigger fish to fry right now. So we can't go and, be the broker between those 2 countries. If they want to sort it out, and Thailand's made it perfectly clear, they want to be left alone. They want to fight. So let them fight. We got to focus elsewhere. We can't be putting out fires in every single place. If someone else wants to jump into that and try to end it, like for example, China, and they want to bring that to an end, then they can do it. But we can't be the world police to that level.
Yeah, Thailand and Cambodia is none of our concern, and neither is India and Pakistan at this point. They can go at it for all we care, and it doesn't really matter. Those 2 are not hot spots for the United States to get involved in, and the only reason that they have become that is because the president, in his endless wisdom, has to stick his nose in every single thing going on in the world, no matter what it is or if it affects us strategically or not, and try and force a ceasefire so that he can line himself up for a Nobel possibly next year, which it's ridiculous, folks. It really is ridiculous. It annoys the hell out of me, and we might as well leave it at that, because I could go in circles about how the hell this is annoying me at this point with how things are going. But beyond that, on top of us probably creating an issue with China today and trying to deal with Venezuela, we are now possibly going to have to start bombing the Iranians in support of the Israelis here in the United States quite soon, because the Israelis are preparing for more strikes against the Islamic Republic of Iran. So we'll have to wait and see how that's all going, but another thing on the plate. Moving on from that, we are now going to be moving on back into Europe to cover all the remaining developments that we haven't gotten to yet, including the actual front lines in Ukraine and major news that's come out of Turkey. According to news that has emerged today, within the area of a province near to the Sea of Marmara, which is, I believe, the Balıkesir or Manyas area, another drone has been found. This one, once again, appearing to be Russian from what we understand. It is a Merlin VR type ISR drone, which appears to have parachute landed into a field in Turkey within this area near to the Sea of Marmara, and it was once again located by the Turks today. This is actually the third drone that has been found within Turkish territory, and it is starting to show that Russian drone activity, especially around the Bosphorus and Dardanelles, is incredibly significant just from the amount of drones that are being found at this point. So far, the Turkish government has not made an official statement about these ongoing discoveries of drones that have been found on their territory that are Russian by design, origin, and operation. But we are assuming that the Republic of Turkey will eventually have to make a statement, because the amount of drones that are being found over just the course of this week is so ludicrously large that it is really demanding that the Republic of Turkey makes some form of an official response to these massive drone incursions that keep happening within their country. So we'll be waiting to see what's going on with that. But for now, the Turks have made no comment, but they are finding more drones with each passing day. Outside of that, Viktor Orban, being who he is, made some very goofy statements today. And I cannot play the clip, but I can read it off to y'all. Let me give my best Orban voice. Russia has already been attacked, to say Napoleon hasn't it, and Hitler, they didn't succeed. And now obviously Carlos will succeed. That's how he
kick him out of NATO. Kick him out. Kick him out.
I gotta say, folks, this guy is absolutely stupid. It's like, wasn't the Hungarian people subjugated and treated like third-class citizens in their own country by the Soviet Union after the Second World War? Is he really trying to support the Russians? Man, the Russians would have this guy literally licking their boots to clean them if it was the 1960s. Like literally, that's how they were treating the Hungarians. I got to tell y'all, this guy has about the intelligence of Gru from Despicable Me. Because who in the hell could ever sit there and say, yes, the country that subjugated my people for the past 50 years before we were finally free of the Soviet clutches and treated our people like shit. Clearly, we want to align with those people because they really know what's up.
I'd say also, if he feels so strongly about this and feels that the EU is going to bring them to war with Russia because the EU is the one, quote unquote, aggressing against Putin, which how the hell are they aggressing? They're defending their country while they're getting hybrid attacked by Putin's army. But it's like, if this guy feels so strongly about it, then leave NATO. Get the hell out of it.
Yeah, and leave the European Union as well. Don't get any economic benefits from the wicked, wayward ways of the West. I mean, it's not like, it's not like Hungary tried to conduct an uprising against their Soviet overlords in 1956, and people ended up getting slaughtered in the hundreds within Hungary for that. Does this guy not remember this? Let me pull up a picture of this here. Oh, let's see here. Let me find the ones where the Soviets came in. Oh yeah, look at that. Isn't that the capital of his country in 1956 when the Soviets came in and put down the Hungarian uprising to get rid of their Soviet overlords, and instead of getting rid of them, the Soviets just shot and killed hundreds of Hungarians? Is that the country that this guy is aligning with right now? It doesn't seem like a country that you'd want to align with, considering that they put your own people down, and a lot of those people who were around to see their own countrymen getting shot are still alive to this day while this guy is in office. I'm not a Hungarian, folks, but if I was a Hungarian, I'd be quite insulted by my national leader trying to align my country with the nation that had oppressed my people for decades under Soviet rule. Not really a country I'd be a big fan of. Let me see if I can get you all the actual casualty count here for this one. Oh, only 3,000 civilians killed. So, basically 9/11 1.5 times over. So, clearly, apparently to Viktor Orban, not a big deal. I mean, clearly not a big deal. I mean, the United States rebelled against the British, and one of the main flashpoints was the Boston Massacre, and if I remember correctly, only 4 people were killed in the Boston Massacre. And that was enough to get us to rebel from the British almost entirely and to treat them as they were a hostile overlord in the colonies. Meanwhile, Viktor Orban probably had parents that lived through this time in history in Hungary with 3,000 civilians killed by Soviet hands, by Russian hands, and this guy's going to act like they're really a country to be admired and respected. That's a sellout. Right there. Like, if you're going to sit there, that's basically a collaborator at that point. To sit there and try and align with a country that did that to your own people, that's absolutely abhorrent. But anyways, moving on from that and those stupid statements, we are going to be moving on And up into Poland. The Poles have arrested a spy today who is a 40-year-old man accused of offering to cooperate with a foreign intelligence service and gathering information on military rail transports, including aid to Ukraine. A court ordered 3 months of detention, according to authorities' statements. So at the moment, we do understand that the Poles are still dealing with spies inside their country and possibly espionage rings. Meanwhile, the Poles have announced the production of the Crab 2, which is a brand new version of the Crab SPG, which has been provided to Ukraine in larger numbers, which will be improved based off of the lessons learned from the operations of the Crab SPGs within the armed forces of Ukraine that are currently inside of Ukraine and still fighting against the Russian Federation currently. Moving on out of that news in Poland, it's now time for us to get on to the frontline news inside of Ukraine. And we actually have some very interesting stuff today. Moving us on down into our location unknowns, we were able to see this Russian tank here, which I think that's a shipping container.
Oh wow, I think that is a shipping container. Actually, they've cut it up and made like sliding barn doors out of it. Oh, look at that! a little loaf going by.
Man, oh my God, there's more of them.
I
Well,
wonder if that really helps.
man, you know, the Russians, man, they sat there and just read Eric Levinson's book, The Box, about the shipping container, and they're like, wow, this really revolutionized the world and global logistics. We had to put this on their tanks. It may revolutionize their logistics. It's like, I tell you, folks, the Russians are bad off these days. They're using containers to make their barns. We also were able to see the Russian casualty report for the day. And, oh, look at that!
Oh, they got one bobcat today. That's wonderful right there. Honestly, they should do like the 5 days of Christmas thing, where it's like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 type bobcats. But that's a little too much to ask for. That's too rigid. But tell us more.
And according to Ms. Disa, keeper of the records, artillery losses are just above average, and another special equipment loss. Other categories are below recent averages. Typo, submarine total is 2, unchanged from yesterday. And a big thanks to Ms. Disa, keeper of the records, for keeping those records well. According to the Russian casualty report for the day, 1,090 Russian soldiers have been wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, along with 1 APC, 130 supply trucks, 0 main battle tanks, 37 artillery systems, 346 drones, 1 MLRS, 1 Bobcat skid steer, and a Bobcat in a pear tree. Man, what a day, what a day. We also were able to see, moving on from that into the front lines, that the Russians just weren't having a good day again. Another one of their counterattacks to try and get back into Kupiansk appears to have failed, quite miserably, as this footage will disclose.
Oh,
Oh,
looks like someone. Oh. That was a bad mistake.
man.
Ah.
And we can see that work is being done for sure around here,
Whoa.
and it appears that that counterattack certainly did fail. Meanwhile, the 116th Mechanized Brigade was also doing their work against the Russians within this area. I gotta tell you, a lot of those Russians, folks, were quite sleepy. We can see the Russians firing tracers at this drone, but to no avail. They are missing by inches in every direction. Oh, look, the Russians making a run for it. And I don't think he ran far enough. We can also see this MTLB getting hit here as well, along with this four-wheeler. And this Buhanka.
And 1 loaf in a pear tree.
Ooh, and a BMP-3. How exquisite. Well, it appears the 116th Mechanized Brigade was doing a lot of work along with the other brigades in the area to stop further Russian advances. I'd have to say, folks, I don't think they're making it back into Kupiansk, just based off of the video and picture evidence. Moving on from that and down into Seversk, we also were able to see a Russian tank getting hit within this area by the 45th Artillery Brigade's FPV drone forces. You see them going on in. Oh, a leg. We can also see here a main battle tank. Oh, and another one. Ooh, and a Ural 4320. That's actually very rare these days. Oh, heavens. Oh, that's a wonderful fire. And look, it's Christmas in the 45th Brigade. Merry Christmas.
Oh.
Oh, ho, ho, ho,
Oh,
ho.
ho, ho, ho.
Oh, man. You know, that's what Zelensky said when he wandered up in the Kremlin. He said, ho, ho, ho. We're going to, like, man, we're going to obliterate this place. Actually, he walked in, man. He said, what the hell is this, a manger? Like, there's a whole bunch of animals up in here. Very Christmas themed.
Oh, no, not the rat.
Oh, man. You know, the Russian version of the nativity scene, it has a horse, a rat, and a couple of other things in it as well that we won't get into, but, you know, a decent amount of deals. And it's not a nativity scene because, you know, clearly Putin's in the center of it and he's Satan. So the antithesis of the nativity scene is what the Russians have for Christmas. But moving on down to Chasiv Yar, we got to see this Ukrainian tank working hard today down in the city. Some people said that the Ukrainians have completely lost Chasiv Yar and the Russians are bearing down on Konstantinivka. This clip is once again proving that the Ukrainians do control a slice of Chasiv Yar and are still obliterating the Russians within this town. We can see this is actually a T-72B3 laying down high explosive rounds into the buildings. That's where the Russians are. That says enemy position. We see them firing the coaxial machine gun as the main gun reloads. And they're about to get ready to start laying it on down again. And they're laying high explosive rounds into that building like nothing ever before. Look at them go. Another HE round into the building. That's the third one. And we can see here another hit. A fourth one. Holy moly. This enemy position will no longer be a position anymore. It's an enemy atomization, basically. We see them hitting him again. Goodness, that's the fifth HE round. The gun's reloading. And when you see the gun pop back down here in a second, just a little bit, that's when the gun has reloaded. We see them hitting it again. And we see them continuing.
Really a spooky landscape out here. Just the ground smoky. It's a little bit spooky looking. It looks less like Christmas and more like Halloween.
Man, honestly, it really does. Now you see them getting ready to land another hit. They've landed an unlimited amount around a number of HE shells into this building. They're literally leveling the thing with the high explosive rounds. I mean, goodness, look at them go. Man, you better watch out. You better not pout. You better not cry. I'm telling you why. The FPV will find you and get you. And it's making a list. Oh, look at that. A little bit of return fire right there. Well, it looks like the T-72 shrugged that off.
This thing's really getting it bad right here. Also, by the way, we have a viewer. It's called Nightmare Before Christmas. That's actually in the chat sometimes. This would qualify as a Nightmare Before Christmas right here, I would say.
Oh, please. For the Russians, at least. For the Ukrainians, this is a dream before Christmas. Oh, a little artillery over there, too, just to add a little cherry on top. Nice. And off they go. Well, moving on from that clip, down the line and towards Dobropelia, we also got to see some Russian vehicles getting destroyed down here. Take a little look. Oh, a little destroyed ATV, one that's on fire, another one that got knocked out and abandoned, and, oh, look, there was a drone right there. Look at that. Wow, what an amazing sight. And two other burning ATVs and another one on top of that. Well. Gotta tell y'all, that doesn't look like it's a good assault going towards Dobropelia right now. And down in Pokrovsk, it's no better. The 35th Marine Brigade was giving the Russians a little bit of a medicine today as well. Take a look at this. And I'm being told, folks, that there's a bow, and we're going to get to that here in a minute, actually. Because we were actually supposed to...
sent out the bat signal.
Man, we were actually supposed to have gotten to that one a minute ago, and I completely forgot about it, so we'll have to circle back to the whole turkey thing after this clip. So moving us back...
Man, that's one thing that people never get to see. They never get to see the behind-the-scenes stuff. The way that we sort of cue each other in outside of our little verbal on-air stuff is we do use text messaging and also Discord messaging to sort of keep us each on track. So we do that from time to time. And a little poll text message was the prompt for the enforcer to jump right back into it.
Yeah, and also we get those for all kinds of stuff. But beyond that, a lot of people have been talking about that third Turkish drone that has been, well, the third Russian drone that has been found in Turkish territory recently. And Matthew, are people saying that that is a Turkish delight, or are they saying that that's something else?
So now that we've seen and we're being told that this is the third Russian drone that has crashed in Turkey, and it appears to be a long-range recon drone yet again. None of these are attack drones, by the way. They're all long-range recon. So what are your thoughts about that? 61% said Russia is likely spying on the Turkish military, while 26% said Russia is sending threats to Turkey, basically gray zone threats, and 6% said it seems like errant drones that are just mysteriously somehow crossing the entire Black Sea and going all the way down to Turkey, very, very far away. So there's a couple of different options here that this could be, by the way. For one, Turkey does control access to the Black Sea through the Bosphorus and the Dardanelles. That could be something that Russia wants to check on, perhaps. But what it also could be is we have heard that Turkey's going to be returning the S-400 to Russia and then buying U.S.-made air defense systems, or at least Western-made air defense systems. So Russia could be checking to see if Turkey's received any new air defense systems yet. They could be checking on that as well. Or they could be trying to see if Turkey's being used as a place to stage some NATO military equipment that's then going to go to Ukraine. They could be checking on that as well. Or the third option, or the fourth option, is it could be Russia just sending threats to Turkey to make them back off of their pro-NATO stance. So, me personally, I would say that Russia has some type of interest in spying on Turkey. It seems less like a threat to me at this point. It seems like they're actually trying to find something that they believe is in Turkey that's piqued their military interest. So I'm with the 62%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that they're definitely spying on the Turks. I would be with a 62%, because the fact that this is traveling, where these drones are all being found around the Bosphorus, the Dardanelles, and the Sea of Marmara, they may actually be trying to follow or track naval activities or maritime activities within that area. And if we find any of them around the area of Gallipoli, we're going to know for sure at that point that they're trying to track maritime movements around this area, either by NATO or Turkey or other states in general, and how they may possibly be able to exploit those movements and then get a sub or something else through this area without the Turks really noticing all too much. So I hope that does address that well, at least in my opinion, is what I think that's going to be, especially considering where all these are being found right now. But moving on from that and back into the remainder of our frontline news, and also, folks, I gotta get y'all ready for this abrupt ending here, because in 3 pieces of news left, we're going to be done with the news segment. There is once again not a speech from Zelensky tonight. There are videos that are being published on the president of Ukraine's YouTube channel, but those are 50 minutes long, and they're generally press conferences, which don't really count as speeches here because they're just so long, and also generally have multiple different people talking, including different national leaders. It really doesn't count too much as a speech. So in 3 pieces of news, folks, the news is going to be over, and unfortunately we don't have a speech again. Zelensky is burning down phone lines right now in Europe, in European conferences, so he hasn't had time to make a speech in several days. But moving on from that and into the area of Novopavlivka, we also got to see some Russians getting slammed around here. Oh, it's a turtle. It's a turtle tank. Huh. Well, they missed that one. They were going for the next one. Oh, actually, they're not. They're getting not the third, and not the, oh, wait a minute. Looks like they found one of interest right here. Ooh.
Also, by the way, I saw someone ask a good question here. They said, enforcers, why are these drones crashing in Turkey? Why wouldn't they keep flying and return back to Russia if they're trying to spy on Turkey? My theory behind that is, once again, that these drones have a limited range. They're not like unlimited in their range. So, for example, the Orlan has a range of about 370 miles or so, or about 600 kilometers. So it could be maybe they're being sent on one-way missions and going as far as they possibly can one way and not making a round trip to return back. That could be the reason why they're crashing, because we're not really sure where these are being launched from. We're being told that 1 or 2 of them was launched from the Russian mainland, but it's also possible that maybe Russian ships are launching them perhaps, and that maybe that's how they're covering the distance a lot more efficiently, but we're just not really sure.
And I would have to say, Matthew's analysis on that is spot on, folks. Moving on down the Zaporizhia front as well, just to make sure that we keep this thing trucking on along so that we can try and have a nice, good question segment tonight that's not too short. We also were able to see the Ukrainians building new defensive fortifications, so that way they can just dig on in and just kind of wait the Russians out. Look at these. These were built in Zaporizhia, by the way. That's a lot of defensive fortifications.
Look at that car over there keeping up with the drone.
Man, they might be the ones flying it, actually.
Could be. How are they getting past this? I mean, the Russians can't get past this.
Man, honestly, they probably can. Like, truth be told, they probably won't be able to get past this.
That's a hell of a lot of work.
I think that car really is keeping up with the drone, and they're flying it from the car.
That thing's going berserk over there.
Oh, this is sped up, by the way. That's why it looks like it's going crazy. This drone was actually not going too fast in real life.
Well, I know it's sped up, but, you know, it's still going crazy.
I mean, that's true. That's true. You know, you're not lying. You're not lying. You are truthing.
This is making me tired looking at all this work. Could you imagine how much effort it was to put all those dragon's teeth in place, dig the trenches like that, mound the dirt up against miles and miles and miles of this? I mean, that's just a hell of a lot of effort.
Honestly, man, it is a whole load. It's going to make it easier for the Ukrainians to hold the Russians back. It's going to be a lot more difficult for the Russians to get past this as well. So it looks like the Ukrainians have put in a good amount of work and effort. And imagine the amount of concrete that was needed to make all those dragon's teeth along with the rebar.
That's honestly crazy.
Man, and it just keeps going, folks. Oh, a little crossing right there. Wow. Oh, they stopped there for a second, and now they're on the move again. I gotta say, folks, I think I would hire the Ukrainians as landscapers. They do a pretty good job at setting up the terrain and the features.
I would call them a terraformer.
Oh, man, that's a high honor right there.
That's crazy. They might do good on Mars.
You know, we kept having blown up rockets. Anyways.
Legalize comedy.
Legalize comedy. Legalize comedy. Oh, man. Just make sure that we hit all the bases there.
It turns out a requirement to be a billionaire is to be a little bit manic.
The number one priority to be rich in this country is to be really weird. Yeah, weird.
Damn.
Oh, look at that. Oh, they were still working down there. Look at that. Man, they got the contractors on that job, man. They are working hard.
That is crazy. They got like moats with water in it down there too. I don't know if they got gators, for like guard gators.
I wonder. I think it's just rain.
Right. Oh man, the Russians aren't friends with the gators like they are with the bears. Like I don't think the gators are getting along too well with the Russians.
Man, I don't think so at all. I don't think anything gets along with the Russians, really. Also,
the bears do occasionally if the bears are trained to, you know, chill out.
Yeah, that's kind of true. That is kind of true. Someone said, Monster Lab said, how long does this take to make? It didn't take too long from what we know. It was done in about an afternoon after a little break, and then they knocked this out. I'm just kidding. It actually took months to be able to build this, actually. So you're looking at...
Is this thing looping or something? I mean, it's not looping. Dang, no, that's enough of that. I've seen the same thing over and over at this point.
Well, are you not impressed? Are you not entertained?
No, it's impressed. It's impressed. It's just like once you've seen one line, you've seen them all.
But Matthew, it's truly profound how far this goes. And there's only a little bit more to this, folks. Only a little bit more. And look at everyone down there working hard. Oh, look, they had the truck with the dragon's teeth in it. They just drive down the line with that little crane, and they just lift them out of the back of that truck and set them down in their spot. And they also got other guys over here setting up barbed wire. 3 rows of barbed wire, one in a depressed trench here, one of them above ground, and then another one over here. Actually, that's 2 rows of barbed wire over there. This is one hell of a work right here, honestly, like a defensive work. And then we see here, this is still...
there's the unfinished part.
Yeah, they're still working on this part. Man, Saudi Arabia's line, step aside. The Ukrainians have far outdone that in just about a month, maybe. But that's the current defensive lines that they're building in Zaporizhia right now. Moving us on down to Odessa and near to the area of Mayaki, we were able to hear that the bridge to Moldova has unfortunately suffered tremendous damage due to the Russian cluster bombing that happened on this bridge the other day. This will have some issues, at least between Ukrainian and Moldovan trade. And we will probably see that the situation might become logistically difficult between those two countries for road transportation. But with that, folks, that is all of the news that we have for the day. And that's going to be moving us on into the second segment of the stream, where we get to talk to each and every single one of y'all. And we get to talk to y'all about anything and everything except for religion, politics, climate change, and whether the A-10 is relevant in modern warfare or not. And here comes someone, folks, who's going to be really snarky and go, "Oh, I'm glad that there's no politics rule." Oh, and then that's really going to get me. But anyways, with that, folks, we are going to be getting on into that second question segment, because it's Christmas, and it's the season of giving. And what better way to give back to the community, as the old corporate saying goes, than to answer a couple of questions from the chat. So, Matthew, what in the world do we have?
All right, so it's now time to jump into our final question segment of the night. First, grabbing our super chats, then grabbing our live chats and Morse code decoders of the stream. And you might have noticed that we are fresh out of polls, but the polls love us. And we love the polls because, that's something right there that we got to appreciate when the polls are on your side. You got to appreciate that. You don't want to piss the polls off, okay? But jumping into our first super chat here, this one goes to Jason Christ Follower, who puts in a $100 support.
Hey!
And thank you very much, Jason, for that massive support right there. We do appreciate that. Extremely generous of you. And Jason said, "I'm a plumber, Southeast U.S., and I drive the company 2015 GMC Sierra box van around between jobs and listen through the recorded live streams. And I love y'all's vehicle equipment expertise and current conflict affairs coverage. And y'all are awesome."
And I gotta say, a tremendous thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Really cool to hear that you're actually a plumber from the Southeast. We have a lot of people who work in the trades who watch this show out of the U.S. Southeast, many others as a matter of fact. And I gotta say, it's really cool to know that we have another in Jason. And I gotta say, humongous thanks to you so much for supporting. It's great to hear that you love to listen to our show through the vehicle, through the vehicular analysis, the equipment expertise, and the foreign affairs coverage, and what we do with that. We're really honored to know that folks like you greatly enjoy this channel and find a good deal of worth out of it, and I hope that a lot of people do. It really makes us feel pretty happy about doing this when people get a lot of value out of the thing, and so we're always happy, and we thank y'all greatly for it whenever y'all say any kind words or say that it was a really good show or that you'll find it worthwhile, because we love to know that we're able to provide a service to the public in some way through this coverage. But with that in mind, folks, I do thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, Jason. And with that, it's time for us to move on to the next one. But before we move on to the next one, though, Matthew, I saw someone call cowardice on myself. And I have to address such slight, because I will not let it stand. I will read you all the statement, and I'll address it on air. Someone said, "Enforcer is a coward to China. They violate international law for 30 years, and you seem fine with that, and you want to worry about China's feelings. They might get mad. Good." Well, this is why people like you might not be in charge of foreign policy, and you might not make it that far in foreign policy, because the world is a lot more complicated than black and white. There's a decent amount of gray area in a lot of things, and there's a lot of nuance. Like, for example, Saudi Arabia still has in their country capital punishment by beheading, which is generally considered cruel and inhumane in the United States of America. Should we really align ourselves with a country that has that kind of a moral disposition and also appears to have killed one of our journalists at one point? Probably not, but the world's a lot more of a gray area. Sure, they are quite backwards in the way that they execute the laws of their country and generally how their government operates, but we also get a lot of oil out of them. So we make a good deal of money off of that, and it also helps us to lower the gas prices in America that people like you complain about being too high. So for that reason, we've kind of got to have the little bit of a gray area there to go, sure, they're kind of barbaric, but they sell us oil, so we'll let it slide. With the Chinese, we have a collective trade with them annually of about $500 billion or so. And we've already seen that prior this year, whenever the president would threaten a gazillion% tariff against the Chinese, the economy would basically dive just because of the fact that that was announced. Not that it went into effect, that it was announced. And it caused significant damage each time that that happened. So it shows that as far as the way we deal with the Chinese, you really can't, do anything too extreme at the moment, because it'll actually be pretty painful to you. Like, for example, I don't know about you personally, but you may be living off of your parents' dime, maybe you're one of those people who wander around and, your parents kind of pay for your existence and you live in your own place and you smoke weed every day and you don't really do too much. Well, if you tell your parents that are pretty much paying for your existence to kiss your ass and so on and so forth, and they stop paying for your existence, well, that ends up hurting you a lot. You're probably going to have to go get a job. That might not be the greatest thing for you. You know, you might be adverse to working. And then, you know, you're in a much worse position. You'll still manage to get by, but you'll not be happy about it at all. And you'll realize that the former position that you were in, where you were kind of, you know, mooching off of your parents' dime, might have been a better one. Not saying that China's our parent and that we're mooching off of their dime, but at the same time, it's to say that sometimes actions have consequences. And sometimes you have to understand the relationship that you have with certain nations or people or entities around the world to be able to conduct your actions accordingly. And while I'd say we could go into Iran with a sledgehammer and also against the Russians with a sledgehammer, with the Chinese it's different because they have a decent amount of economic fallout that they could create within the country. So with that, I hope that addresses that well for you, because while you might think it's cowardice, what it more so is effective foreign policy decision-making and trying to look out for American best interests at the end of the day the best we can. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, so our next one goes to Chef Danny B, who puts in a $50 support. And thank you very much, Chef Danny, for that support, and we do appreciate that very, very much. And Chef Danny said, "Good evening, Enforcers. Chef Danny here, and off work early, and actually get to watch the whole stream."
Hey, that's great to hear, Danny B. We actually saw you come in very early on. We're like, hey, he's here. Early, as a matter of fact. And it's great to hear that you actually got off work early. And you get to watch the entire stream live. We're great. It's a great thing to have you here tonight. And I got to say, a wonderful thing for you to support this channel and help this thing to keep on running. And it's wonderful to know that you've been here to listen to the entire thing. So humongous thanks to you so much once again. And of course, it's always great to have the official chef of the LSA here with us on air today and tonight. And so with that, humongous thanks to you once again. And we are on to the next one.
And we also have a $50 support from Joseph Carr, also extremely generous. And thank you very much, Joseph, for that $50 support. And Joseph said, "I think someone needs to remind the United States who our allies are. And trust me, it's not Russia and it's not China."
I would agree with you. Oh, man, it's crazy how, like, you know, the U.S. government just isn't really getting that right now. The last one kind of didn't really get that a lot. Was really soft-handed with everything to the point that it may as well have been in action. But the current one, oh, buddy, that's something else. But I do thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I'd have to say, folks, it's a very important thing that we continue to keep our relationship strong with our allies, because our allies are really the only reason we've been able to get ahead in the world in this country, to be in the position we are today with the kind of country we have. So with that, a big thanks to you so much for the support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to go to none other than Howard Mendelson, who puts in a 50 as well. And thank you very much, Howard, for that massive support, and we do appreciate that. And Howard said, "Exactly which congressionally approved sanctions are we enforcing? And also, what evidence of fentanyl trafficking by Venezuela has been publicly exposed? And what is the legal definition of narco-terrorist? And are they trying to provoke a Gulf of Tonkin?" Now, I will say this, Howard. There are real sanctions that are being placed on vessels. We can't say exactly which vessels they are because it's on a case-by-case basis, but there are approved sanctions. There is an existence of that. But as far as we know, though, there was not the existence of sanctions on that vessel that was seized today, as far as we know. That is a difference. Also, by the way, when it comes to drug trafficking out of Venezuela, that's been well documented for a while. We don't know exactly which boats are doing the trafficking exactly, but it is proven that Venezuela is involved in the drug trade. That has been proven for a long time. But as for the legal definition of narco-terrorist, we'd have to pull that one up, I think. But Enforcer, what say you?
And let me see if I can get the legal definition of narco-terrorism. Let's see here. So, let's see. Okay, so this is the definition of narco-terrorism published in 1987 by the FBI Law Enforcement Bulletin. So this is the definition. Annotation: narco-terrorism, the involvement of terrorist organizations and insurgent groups in drug trafficking, has become a problem with international implications. And then this is the abstract, which is more so a little bit further detail about it. But beyond that, it appears we could download the full file. We won't do that because it will be a lot of reading. This is just kind of like the very light overrun, the annotation and abstract on what's in the actual file, but that's basically what a narco-terrorism is. And considering that these groups, pretty much every cartel in the Americas, is heavily armed, and organized like a paramilitary organization, they would fall under a narco-terrorist definition. Basically, every cartel would fall under the narco-terrorist definition. So they are narco-terrorists. That would be the definition of a narco-terrorist. And additionally, I do have to say, though, narco-terrorist kind of sounds silly, because whenever I hear of like a narco, I don't know. It always brings up to mind to me like narcoleptics. So I always think of like narcoleptic terrorism. I'm like, man, that must be like a really ineffective form. I guess I just pass out whenever it comes around to it. But beyond that, I know it stands for narcotics, but I always think of narcoleptics. But beyond that, let's see. Some of these ships are sanctioned. The Islamic Republic of Iran's vessels are directly sanctioned, but like Matthew was saying, we don't really know if the Chinese one was on the sanctions list at all, and it doesn't appear that it may have been from what we could find. So that's entering new territory today. But outside of that, the groups in Venezuela technically would meet the definition of narco-terrorism, but this is entering a whole new bound here, and this is why the foreign policy position is so confused. You only go on one point. You only need 1 point to push a situation with Venezuela. So it was the drug trafficking and the cartels. Now we're going after the oil that the Venezuelans stole from the U.S. companies that were there that they kicked out. So it's like, which one is it? Is it that we don't like them kicking out our U.S. companies, or do we not like the cartels in Venezuela? It can't be, like, you could do both, but it makes the whole situation a lot more complicated in approaching it in foreign policy, because now we have multiple different angles we have to explain away and justify whenever anyone asks about it.
Yeah, I don't understand why the U.S. doesn't call them the cartels. I mean, that's what they are. They're drug cartels. So what was insufficient about that term? And if we're being honest here, if I'm being totally honest, it's all about marketability, because you might notice the word narco-terrorist is being used in the mainstream for one of the first times now in Venezuela. That's likely intentional. It's trying to sell the idea that these people are extremely bad, and the word cartel simply wasn't getting that across. So they came up with a new word. And it's like, isn't every drug dealer essentially like a terrorist in some form? Like pretty much all drug dealers use violence because it's involved. It's a nasty business. It's a back alley type business. So there's always going to be violence involved. There's turf wars. There's disputes over money and things like that. It's always going to include that. So it's a new thing. And also, by the way, I think they reclassified the drugs coming out of Venezuela as weapons of mass destruction, which is,
What?
yeah, you didn't hear about that?
No, I didn't.
Let me go get that real quick. Let's see here. Weapons of mass destruction, Venezuela. And the reason why they're doing this, folks, is because they're trying to basically sell this idea right here. Let me get this thing real quick. I was a Twitter master on the other one, but I'm having a hard time getting this one, so I'll just have to go to Google.
Next thing you know, man, they're going to be classifying alcohol as a weapon of mass destruction, man. That's drunk driving is a weapon of mass destruction these days, folks. I've never heard
Here
of
we go.
Oh, here we go.
I got you. I'm going to put this right here in the chat. It's a link straight to the executive order declaring it a weapon of mass destruction.
Well, let's go take a gander then. By the authority vested in me as President by the Constitution and the law of the United States of America, I hereby order illicit fentanyl is closer to a chemical weapon than a narcotic. 2 milligrams, an almost undetectable trace equivalent to 10 to 15 grains of table salt, constitutes a lethal dose. Hundreds of thousands of Americans have died from fentanyl overdoses. The manufacture and distribution of fentanyl, primarily performed by organized criminal networks, threatens our national security and fuels lawlessness in our hemisphere and at our borders. The production and sale of fentanyl by FTOs and cartels fund these entities' operations, which include assassinations, terrorist acts, and insurgencies around the world, and allow these entities to erode our domestic security and well-being of our nation. The two cartels that are predominantly responsible for the distribution of fentanyl in the United States engage in armed conflict over territory and to protect their operations. Aren't those two cartels in Mexico, by the way? They're not even in Venezuela, from what we know.
Oh, and which ones were they again?
It wouldn't be like the Sinaloa cartel and the other one that's like the alphabet name cartel more towards central Mexico?
Yeah, Sinaloa is definitely in Mexico. I'm not sure which one you're referring to when you say the alphabet one.
Let me G. Is it that one? No, it's not that one. Cartels in Mexico.
Are you talking about the CJNG?
I think it is that one, yeah.
Yeah, it's like the something New Generation cartel or something. A very vicious one, by the way. That's one of the most vicious.
So let's see here. Yeah, this is the other one actually. It is the CJNG right here. It's like so we're saying because those are the ones that I know of that the US has said gets directly involved in importing basically the ingredients or raw fentanyl from China to ship into the United States. So it's like, why in the world would we go and bomb and invade Venezuela when the two very cartels that we're talking about here aren't even in Venezuela, they're in Mexico?
Yeah, does it mention Tren de Aragua at all? Because I think that's one out of Venezuela.
Let's see, armed results.
Wait, I say that, but it might be different. I'm not sure.
Let me see here. Tren de Aragua. Or Trending Aragua. Let's go find it. Yeah, it is a Venezuelan gang. Tren de Aragua is a Venezuelan gang.
So I had it right. Tren de Aragua is Venezuelan cartel. The Cartel of the Suns is another one. I think that's the one that they allege that Maduro's a part of, is the Cartel of the Suns. And they say that one has the government. So I'm personally not in dispute about that. Like, I do believe that Venezuela obviously is operated by cartels. I believe that personally. But some people will say that's not the case. But I mean, who are we kidding here? I mean, Venezuela has been in the drug trade for a long time. It's not anything new. So that part I don't dispute about Venezuela being heavily involved in the transit of drugs. I think that's been well established. It's just, they're trying to add all these new labels to it, like calling it a weapon of mass destruction, saying it's a narco-terrorist. Just call it what it is. It's the cartels, and the U.S. wants to go tend to the cartels. Just say that.
Yeah, I would say that would definitely be the case, but, common sense doesn't necessarily prevail these days like that. But it is quite crazy. We apparently did declare it a weapon of mass destruction. Usually that's spared for, like, nuclear weaponry or biological or chemical weaponry. It's like, drugs in that form, like recreational drugs, have never been classified as a weapon of mass destruction. Because, it's not like you go to war and then someone goes, oh, I'm going to hit you with the fentanyl. Like, no one's going to do that. You get hit with, say sarin gas or a nuclear bomb or something along those lines. And you don't have that guy like on that meme, man, that I show you where he's like, I want that gabagoo. And he's like, what's that? He's like, it's the new fent. Now leave me alone. And he throws it in the guy's face. Like, that's not going to happen in warfare,
Could you show the people the GIF I just sent you on Discord, by the way? Can you show them that? Like, whenever I heard this weapons of mass destruction announcement, I instantly thought of one particular individual from history.
Oh, yo, it's Bush.
I instantly thought, I was like, it seems like the spirit of Bush is coming back around to the White House. Weapons of mass destruction, terrorists. It's like these buzzwords sound very, very familiar to another time where we justified another war that we went to war with the Middle East, basically.
It just hit me, man. I'm not trying to get political here, folks, but I do want to point this out because I just realized this. Wasn't the current president the guy who said that he was totally against the war in Iraq because the whole weapons of mass destruction thing was well overblown and was being used as a justification to invade a country that didn't really need to be invaded? And so now he's declared recreational drugs a weapon of mass destruction to justify military action and a possible eventual invasion of another country.
Yeah, what the hell even is the definition of a weapon of mass destruction? Let's see here, because that doesn't seem to match up with that definition. Let's see here. It says, let's see, I'm not sure if there is like an official. Oh wait, here's the FBI. Let's see if they've got, they appear to have a definition. So let's see here. It says, okay, we have actually a statute that defines it. A WMD is defined by U.S. law as any of the following. And let's see here. A weapon designed to cause death through poisonous chemicals. Is that new? Is that something that's always been the law? Let's see when this law was passed. Let's see here. This law was passed in, they don't have a date on it. Let's see here. So apparently it's not new. So apparently it does qualify as a weapon of mass destruction. I did not know that. So apparently they're considering this a chemical weapon. So it actually falls under the definition of it. So it's actually a valid legal designation.
Well, here's the definition from the Department of Homeland Security. Let's see. A weapon of mass destruction is a nuclear, radiological, chemical, biological, or other device that is intended to harm a large number of people.
I don't think drugs are in. Well, I don't know. It seems like it might be legally valid actually to call it that.
It might be, but I feel like that's kind of a stretch, though. Like that's like saying, like fireball or something is a weapon of mass destruction, because it's got a high alcohol content or something like, it's like that. Yeah, these drugs are laced with fentanyl, which is usually fatal in incredibly small doses, but it's like, you could really declare anything a weapon of mass destruction at that point if it seems to just be extremely harmful.
But you got to remember, though, the allegation is China is manufacturing the fentanyl, and China is sending the fentanyl to Venezuela that's then being distributed by the cartels in Venezuela. That's the allegation. So China would technically be the country that's manufacturing the weapon of mass destruction and then distributing it to its local distributors, which are the cartels. So that's a fair argument. Actually, I'm not gonna say that sounds necessarily wrong. It sounds like it could be justifiable to me.
Yeah, it could be justified. It just sounds weird, though, because usually weapons of mass destruction is saved for, like, a nuclear weapon or a biological weapon, like a super mutated virus or a chemical weapon. Usually you don't hear someone go, okay, cocaine is now a weapon of mass destruction. It's like that just never has been really stretched in that direction from what I know before, historically.
Yeah, typically speaking, when you hear weapons of mass destruction, most people instantly think nukes. Like, that's always what people think, because that was the notorious use of the word or the phrase was nukes in the Middle East. So, harkening back to those Bush times, I'm telling you what, definitely harkening back to it.
We'll have to stop those weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Oh, man, old buddy. Anyways, with that, it's time for us to move on, folks. I didn't too. Well, also I saw Crispy say these drugs are very addictive and dangerous. Yeah, but drugs have been around for a long time, though. We've talked about this before on the channel. Back in the day, you could go down to a drugstore and they'd literally sell you just straight up drugs. You could get cough syrup with cocaine in it. You could get anything. And back then, that was just how things were. And by this definition today, apparently the drugstores back in America, way back in the day, were literally selling weapons of mass destruction to the public. Which is, it's just hard, is really, like, I don't know, folks, like, technically it is correct, Matthew is right, but it still sounds quite odd to say that drugs like that would be weapons of mass destruction, considering that it's usually spared for some form of a weapon that a state institute or some sort of a terrorist group would use that truly kills loads of people in a single use. Like, if sarin gas gets in a ventilation system like it did in the Tokyo subway during the sarin gas attacks in the 90s, it killed hundreds of people all in one go. Like one hit of fent isn't going to kill multiple people because multiple people aren't going to be taking the same hit of fent.
Actually, you're mistaken on that. I will say you're actually mistaken. Fentanyl is not your run-of-the-mill narcotic at all. Fentanyl is extremely poisonous. It's 50 to 100 times stronger than heroin, which is obviously a terrible one, and it's 100 times stronger. So actually, it's 100 times stronger than morphine. It's 50 times stronger than heroin. So that gives you an idea of how strong it is. Morphine is extremely addictive, from what I've heard. Like,
I think
say what?
I think you may be misunderstanding what I meant by that, though. What I'm saying is, if you activate a sarin gas bomb, anyone in the vicinity is going to get killed by that. If you detonate a nuclear bomb, tens of thousands of people are going to get killed by that singular nuclear bomb detonation. Fentanyl, however, like, it's not like 100 people can snort a line of fentanyl simultaneously, or they can just breathe, basically breathe it in without, some sort of a weaponized form of it being made that I don't know of yet. Because how I know it is that it's consumed by an individual, not as some sort of like a mass release sort of a weapon. So that's what I'm trying to say right there.
Well, fentanyl is extremely, extremely deadly, because out of all the drug overdose deaths in the United States over the past year, fentanyl alone has accounted for over 70% of the drug deaths. So that shows you, there's a lot of drugs on the streets. Unfortunately, a lot of people are getting their hands on illegal narcotics all the time. And for 70% of the deaths to be fentanyl, that's a pretty serious thing there. And it shows you how deadly it is. The thing with fentanyl, if you even come in contact with it, it's enough to kill you. Like, if it even gets on your skin, it can just take you out. Like, you'll just stop breathing and you'll just go out. I've seen body cams of police officers accidentally getting exposed to fentanyl. It'll finish you off quick. Like, it's extremely dangerous. It is a potent poison. I would argue it is a chemical weapon personally, but once again, that doesn't necessarily justify everything the U.S. is doing with Venezuela. But I would say it's fair to call it a WMD.
You technically you can, but still, what I'm saying is that it just sounds odd. It sounds very odd to do that, compared to everything else that's a WMD. You know, like for example, I forgot the name of the guy who led the cult in Japan, but they did this one time in Tokyo. They dropped a sarin gas bomb in the ventilation systems of a train station in Tokyo, and they ended up killing, I think, 100 people with that one sarin gas bomb. Like if you dropped fentanyl like that in a ventilation system, would it have that same sort of an effect? And I've got to be honest with you, I'm kind of more so on the line of it probably wouldn't, because it's probably not easy to become an aerosol like that and affect that many people that easily. And that's kind of where I'm saying I don't know. It might be less so of that.
But for example, though, if you take the argument that they're making, which China's the one manufacturing fentanyl, and then they're sending it to South American countries for them to then sell and distribute in the United States, which, I mean, that is happening. I mean, based on what we're hearing and what I've seen, it sounds like that is the case. There's all kinds of criminal organizations in China that manufacture it, and they work with other organizations in South America, Mexico, etc. And then somehow they find ways to get it into the United States, you know, crossing borders, boats, etc. It is a problem. Does that mean we need to invade Venezuela specifically? That's questionable, but it is a problem. So, I mean, I would say it sounds like China is doing that. Also, by the way, wasn't it the West? Wasn't there the opiate wars like between China and the West a long time ago? By the way, where China was getting basically the same thing happening to them, but it was the opposite that time. It was China getting affected by it, not the United States.
Oh, so actually it was the British that did that, and they did that back in the day because they were wanting to open up the Chinese markets to tea from Britain to make money, and also they were trying to cultivate tea fields in China, and the Qing dynasty's government, well, the emperor refused that. So what the British started to do is that they started to import opium into China through the free ports that were there to start getting the Chinese public hooked on opium, so that way they could make money that way instead. And then the emperor banned opium. And then there was this whole thing that happened in, I believe it was Shanghai Harbor, where the Chinese attempted to put a British merchant to death because he was still trading in opium, and that started an entire war. And the British curb stomped them twice over that, in the First Opium War and the Second Opium War. And that's what started the century of humiliation in China's mind, which honestly, I mean, that's not really that far off. But outside of that, that's what happened back then.
So wouldn't that essentially be basically what China's doing to the West now? Is they're basically like flipping the script almost, and they're doing
honestly,
it in a much worse way. I mean, it sounds to me like China's getting the revenge in modern day. And I'm not being funny about that. Like it sounds like they're getting the revenge to a certain degree, and they've simply taken that same idea, what the opiate wars, and they're putting it now toward the fentanyl wars, basically. And they're sending this really toxic, potent, deadly poison over here, which is fentanyl, and people are getting their hands on it because there are unfortunately people that will try it and then they get addicted and then they, you know, unfortunately most likely overdose. 70% of the people taking fentanyl are overdosing. That's how bad it is. So to me, it sounds like it's basically the new opiate wars.
It kind of does sound like that, actually, now that you put it that way. I think I'm starting to see your point a little bit better on that. I still got to say, though, folks, it sounds quite weird because whenever I think of WMDs, I always think of chemical warfare, biological warfare, or a nuclear bomb, and that's basically it. So adding drugs in, it just sounds odd. It's like, well, now that's it. Like, that's what we're going to define a WMDs. But I did get the CDC's leading cause of death statistics here. And what's interesting, folks, is if we're looking at this here, let's see. Can we get all of them? Let's see. Mortality statistics. And that brings us to a whole page. Oh, let's see here. We don't really want the one for 2023. But if that's the best they have, which I don't know, thank you. I guess we'll just use this one. So, apparently, and this is something interesting, folks, right here. Chronic liver disease and cirrhosis. Matthew, can you pull up what the cause of cirrhosis is?
Like cirrhosis of the liver?
Yeah, what would be one of the main leading causes of cirrhosis?
Let's see here. It can typically result from heavy alcohol use, being an alcoholic, chronic hepatitis B or C, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. It's also linked to obesity, diabetes, and high cholesterol. So things like that.
So, generally, we can assume that cirrhosis is caused by heavy rates of alcohol consumption if we wanted to generally take that jump. So we'll say that most of all of these people here, the 52,222 of them that died in 2024, they all died from overconsumption of alcohol that eventually killed them. So let's go get the statistic. Let's see, deaths from drug overdoses in the U.S. So let's see, provisional drug overdose death counts. This is once again from the CDC, and it appears, let's see here. So let's see. So actually, it's going down, interestingly enough. From, let's see here, this was... Damn, it doesn't really make it easy to read this, does it? It was around January of 2024 here, and when we got to January, actually more so what appears to possibly be February or March of, actually April of 2025, the reported number of deaths over a 12-month period from there was 73,690. So crazy enough, folks, drug overdoses, at least from the last reportable statistic from the department, well, the CDC, actually is only about 20,000 more than the amount of people who are apparently dying from alcoholism in this country.
And say that one more time.
Only about 20,000 people more are dying per year from drug overdoses than people are dying from alcoholism.
I mean, that's pretty bad. I mean, alcoholism's an epidemic too.
Yeah, so I mean, could we classify alcohol as a weapon of mass destruction, considering the amount of damage that it's doing and the amount of fatalities it's causing? I mean, it's literally not that far off. Well, I mean, when you really put this into perspective here, that's honestly like a drop in the bucket, 78,000 people dying from drug overdoses, because if that many people are dying from the drink, I mean, that's not really that far off.
Yeah, but I mean, a lot more people drink alcohol though than are using drugs. Like, for example, your pool of people using is much larger with alcohol. So the percentage, if you look at the proportion of people getting fatal, like, diseases from alcohol, is much smaller in proportion than people, taking fentanyl or something like that and then dying from it. The proportion of fentanyl deaths is extremely high if you look at it in proportion.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably true too, but that's still quite a high number. 55,253 people dying, actually, sorry, 52,222 dying of cirrhosis and chronic liver diseases, which is basically just alcoholism for the most part. So, I mean, that's quite something right there. Let's see here. Also, pull this up, man. What's the leading cause of chronic lower respiratory diseases? Let's see if we can get an answer to that.
Chronic lower respiratory diseases.
Yeah. And also, some people are saying that doesn't seem right. This is coming from the CDC, folks, and whenever you die in this country, there is a death certificate that is issued by the hospital or wherever you died or wherever the coroner finds you, and they list your cause of death, which is then reported to the government for statistics purposes. So these numbers are the actually factually correct numbers that are being issued by the CDC that is responsible for the amalgamation of these statistics for all certificates of death within the United States. So these numbers are, in fact, accurate. So
it looks like the chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, or the one you're referring to, the chronic lower respiratory disease, mainly it's from smoking, cigarettes, pipes, cigars, and other culprits. Also, air pollution, long-term exposure to outdoor pollution can do it. Occupational exposures like dust, chemical fumes, and vapors in the workplace, and also there's some genetic factors that can go into it as well.
So if we were to take the assumption that the large majority of these deaths, say 120,000 of them, are from cigarette consumption, then couldn't we classify cigarettes as a weapon of mass destruction as well? I mean, that's killing twice as many people as drug overdoses are at this point in the country over a 12-month period.
I don't, excuse me. I'm not really sure about that because it's hard to like quantify which chronic lower respiratory diseases they're talking about. They're lumping them all in one category. So you can't attribute that entire death statistic to just smoking.
Well, yeah, but at the same time, drug overdoses, though, can't guaranteed include fentanyl. I mean, fentanyl may only be a part of the total amount.
It counts for 70%.
So it counts for, so if we, let's see, let me whip out a calculator here, folks, that way I can get that correct here. So if we were to say that accounted for 73%, well, 70%, sorry, of 73,690 deaths, if we multiply that by 0.7, that means that fentanyl is accounting for 51,583 fatalities in this country every year from its consumption. So that's about 52,000 roughly if we wanted to round that up. So 52,000 people are dying in the United States every year from consumption or overconsumption of fentanyl. So can we find, is there any way, Matthew, that you could find what number of people who had chronic lower respiratory diseases that died in 2024? How many of them actually died from some form of smoke inhalation by tobacco consumption or something along those lines?
Yeah.
So we'll try and get that answer. And I see some people saying, no, you can't. You're picking what you want to count. Well, no, I'm not trying to pick what I'm wanting to count. I'm trying to make the argument here. If we're just trying to say that something that kills a large number of people is a weapon of mass destruction, we can start counting all kinds of stuff as a weapons of mass destruction. Quite literally anything and everything. And one of the two things that I would think at that point is if we're saying that recreational drugs are a weapon of mass destruction because of how dangerous they can be, I could easily see that could be extended to cigarettes and alcohol, because quite obviously, considering that both are addictive to a lot of people, and a lot of people do end up fatally dying eventually from some disease or some sort of an affliction that is caused by the consumption of those items, then you could also say that those could be weapons of mass destruction as well. So, and also some people are saying, well, drugs kill you a lot quicker. But does it really matter, though? I mean, if it's killing you in the end, especially considering that nicotine is inside of tobacco products, which is highly addictive, and you can't really kick the habit once you get it. It's really hard to, much like drug consumption. Isn't that basically the same thing? It's just that it kills you a little bit more slowly. I would say that it really is.
Also, by the way, I can't find a dedicated statistic to respiratory smoking like deaths. I can't find that exactly. All diseases caused by smoking kill over 500,000 people a year in the United States, but that's all of them. That's not just respiratory. That's heart disease. That's everything else that smoking can cause problems from. So there's no specific one for that. But I would say the big difference to me is fentanyl can kill you in an instant. Like it's truly that deadly. If you take a smoke or something, you may live a full life. If you smoke, you might have health issues while you're living that whole life, but you can still most likely live a whole life, or at least a pretty good bit of it. If you get across fentanyl, your odds of dying is extremely high, very badly high, and also it can be very instant as well, like within just a matter of like a day.
Well, yeah, that's true, but I mean, at the same time, like if you smoke a cigarette and you get hooked to it, and you really can't beat that habit, I mean, isn't that basically the same thing just over a longer period of time?
No, because you can live. I've known people that smoke that were 70 and 80, 90 years old. Now obviously I'm not advocating smoking, by the way. If you don't smoke, don't start doing it. It's not good for your health. It'll ruin your quality of life. But there's people that have lived long lives that have been smokers, like chain smokers their whole life. They just had crappy qualities of life, but they've lived the entire thing.
I mean, that's, I suppose that's true, but I mean, some people might take drugs that have a small amount of fentanyl in it, and it's not enough to kill them, and then they just get through it just fine, because I'm sure that everyone who ends up taking drugs that are laced with fentanyl can all be dying, because they still have a large market of consumers here in this country, and if all the drugs were laced with fentanyl, and any drug laced with fentanyl was killing people, they wouldn't even have a customer base to work with after about a year or so.
Well, see, that's the thing, though. With drugs, though, it's like a ladder. Some people start on most people start on the gateway drug. They start on that, so something light, and they think, okay, I'll just stick to this. And then they move on to realize, hey, I can't get the same high off that gateway drug anymore. I need to move up. So they start getting to more progressively worse drugs until eventually you become a hardcore drug addict, and you're looking for something that really gets you going. And most people will run across fentanyl at some point if they're a drug user. And once they run across fentanyl, it's almost a death sentence. They get their hands on that, looking for a better high, and all of a sudden they're dead in the next hour, and which is very, very horrific.
Also, this is something interesting, man. I just found out we can break this down by state. And in the state of Alabama, which has a comparable population to the state of Utah, over the 12-month period from April of 2025, 1,034 people had died in the state of Alabama during that year from fentanyl. In the state of Utah, that number was, with a very comparable population, 680. So about 300 less or so. That's pretty interesting. I wonder why that's the case.
But I do want to make it clear, though, is I see some people in the chat thinking or they're interpreting what I'm saying wrong. Me personally, just I can speak for myself. I think fentanyl is a serious problem. It's really first of all, I have sympathy on people that are addicted to drugs. Some people make bad choices. I'm not one of these people that thinks, oh, if they're addicted to drugs, they're worthless. I don't think like that personally. I have sympathy on people, and also Enforcer does too. I'm not saying he doesn't. He has sympathy as well for that. But at the same time, though. If there's something out there that's so bad as fentanyl that is like literally taking these people out in a second, that is something that needs to be dealt with. Like that, the person that's a drug addict, they have a chance to be able to be rehabilitated and get off of drugs. But fentanyl takes that entire chance away. Like once somebody gets their hands on fentanyl, they're cooked, they're finished. They're going to most likely die because it's so easy to mess up with that. They're going to likely die. So I mean, that's why fentanyl needs to be specifically addressed because it's so deadly, it's so potent that specific one has to get honed in on. So me personally, even though I'm not necessarily all for what's happening in Venezuela right now, I'm not against calling fentanyl a WMD. I think it truly is, and China is definitely behind shipping components of it. They're behind helping manufacture it, and it's likely intentional, and it probably has a malicious purpose behind it.
I would have to say, in my opinion, I just don't know. Like, let's run a poll on this and see what people think about this, because I'd actually be interested to know if folks are more so agreeing with you or me just for the fact of knowing. Because I just feel, folks, like it's very hard to classify drugs, even as fentanyl, as destructive as it is, as a weapon of mass destruction, because I just don't really feel like it meets the traditional definition of a weapon of mass destruction, to me at least. Like I could definitely see an argument for it, but I feel like it's more of a stretch. I feel like it should just generally be described as it always has been, which is a narcotic, which is generally considered to be incredibly dangerous as is, but still isn't a weapon of mass destruction by definition. So I'm not saying that it's just a nothing burger and it's not that serious of a deal. I'm saying that it is quite a deadly and dangerous narcotic, but I just don't really think it meets the traditional definition of a WMD, at least to me. But I might be in the minority here, and a lot of people might not agree with that, so we'll see. But it's an interesting conversation because in this one, I don't really think there is a right or wrong answer, to be entirely honest, Mandy. I think it's just more so of the position that people take, like an opinion. Is it more so a weapon of mass destruction, or is it more so just a narcotic and not necessarily meeting the definition? And I could definitely see an argument for both, but I think I'd generally be in the camp of, I just think it's more so a very dangerous and fatal narcotic. But the truth is, folks, is that if you snort enough cocaine and you do enough meth or heroin or anything, you'll end up overdosing and dying the same with fentanyl. It's just that fentanyl is more potent, but it still has the same end effect if you overdose.
Yeah, well, I think the reason why you're seeing some people have a very strong reaction to that opinion is because there's unfortunately probably a lot of people in the chat that have had family members that have likely died from fentanyl because it's that deadly that, unfortunately, a lot of families in America these days can at least name one person that they know that's likely died from it, specifically from fentanyl. I can actually name one individual, not getting into who they are, obviously, but I know one individual in our extended family that did actually die from fentanyl. And they accidentally got their hands on it. They were making bad choices. They got their hands on it, and that was the end of them. Very, very quickly, unfortunately, it was the end of them. So that's probably why you're seeing such a strong reaction, because it's become so widespread in America. It's gotten everywhere. Like basically, if someone is looking for narcotics, they're going to run across fentanyl, and once they do that, they're finished.
I would have to say, that's true. That did happen, like that, unfortunately. But I just don't know. Also, I saw someone say you can't die from snorting too much cocaine. Sure you can. Like, why wouldn't you be able to? Let's see. Can you die from a cocaine overdose? Let's see here. Well, I didn't want the hotline. I'm trying to get a statistic answer. Oh, damn. So, in 2017, 14,000 people within that year died of just pure cocaine overdose. No fentanyl involved or anything. So I mean, clearly you can. I mean, that would make no sense. Like any drug, any Schedule 1 drug, that included, will kill you in an overdose. So it would be quite odd that wouldn't, especially if you use it in mass amounts. That's like saying, like, drinking too much alcohol won't send you into alcohol poisoning and kill you, which also would be untrue. It would, and it's a very dangerous concern. It happens a lot in Russia, actually. But Let's see. Also, Bobby said that, but Bobby actually has a point with this. This is kind of what I was saying earlier. A car, like a lot of people don't realize this, but automobiles are quite dangerous. Automobiles actually account every year in this country for around 46,000 fatalities. And this is actually some of the lowest numbers that we've seen historically in the history of automobiles in the country. And considering that a car can be used quite effectively in that sort of a matter of dispatching people. I mean, couldn't a car be qualified as a weapon of mass destruction? I mean, we did see, an automobile of some, well, not an automobile, but a motorized vehicle get used in Nice, France to take out 70 people. Couldn't we classify a car possibly as a weapon of mass destruction, especially when it's posed against a crowd of people? And it is, usually instantaneous, several tons of steel hitting you at one point. Usually most people don't get through that.
But is it intended to be a deadly weapon, though? Like, anything can technically be a deadly weapon, but it goes a step further to call it a weapon of mass destruction, especially. But anything can. Like, for example, in law school, you're taught that anything can be a weapon, a deadly weapon. Like, for example, if someone uses a car in a very deadly manner, then the car becomes a deadly weapon. And, when it comes to self-defense, you're justified in using deadly force to protect yourself in certain instances. So, I don't think you can really say like these cars aren't intended to be weapons in the first place. They're not intended to be. But if China is manufacturing fentanyl for the malicious purpose of hooking Americans on it to wipe them out, I mean, that sounds like a chemical weapon to me.
I would say it certainly is, like, at least at this point. But I just don't know, man. Something about it, like, there's just something about it within me, like, as far as I guess you could say, what would it be? A conviction, basically, that putting a drug, any form of narcotic, under the definition of a weapon of mass destruction, it just feels odd. Like saying it's a narcotic, which carries along a connotation of danger with it in itself. I feel like that's a very justifiable definition because it certainly is a narcotic. But a weapon of mass destruction, though, because cocaine, once again, can kill you in an overdose, along with heroin, meth, and any other form of drug. And while it takes a little bit more of it, it still is dangerous and deadly for people to consume and use. And those have never been classified as weapons of mass destruction before, so it just feels weird that fentanyl is going to be a step above the rest, and it's now a WMD instead of just a incredibly dangerous narcotic like the others are, just to a higher degree.
Yeah, surprisingly, this is extremely controversial, it looks like in the chat. People are definitely sticking around for the conversation, but people are very highly opinionated on this one. But on the poll, though, the poll says, do you agree with fentanyl being classified as a weapon of mass destruction? 56% said yes, and only 44% said no. So the majority of people, and hopefully, I hope the poll is not being tainted by people's political opinions on this, because it has become political, because obviously the current administration executive ordered it to be called a weapon of mass destruction. So there might be some level of maybe political tainting to this, but I would personally agree with it. Not that I agree with the administration, but just on this singular issue right here, looking at it neutrally, I would actually agree with the classification.
I would actually have to say I'm actually quite surprised, Matthew, that the poll was that close. I was actually assuming I was going to be in the very small minority. But that's actually a 12-point difference. That's actually a lot closer than I thought I was going to be. But I don't know, folks, and I'm not saying this off of a political level at all. I just feel like it doesn't meet the traditional definition. It's a very dangerous, potent, and deadly narcotic, but I just don't really feel like any form of a narcotic can really ever arise to the level of a weapon of mass destruction, at least in my opinion. So that would be my 2 cents on it. So that is what that is what it, I'm trying to find a good way to round this out, folks, so that we can get back to questions. But that's my 2 cents on it. I just don't really feel like it arises to the definition of a WMD. I just feel like it's an incredibly dangerous and deadly narcotic, which is already, like, a narcotic is already something that the government goes out of its way to whip a flamethrower out on and destroy already. So naming it a weapon of mass destruction is more so like a topical renaming to me, rather than changing the way that we address the situation.
Yeah, well, the one thing I would disagree with, though, about the whole now the intent. Now, if we want to get into this, I'm not trying to be political here, so take this neutrally, people. Please take this neutrally. But I think the intent behind calling fentanyl a weapon of mass destruction was to be used as a justification for war. I don't think it was intended to necessarily stop the flow of fentanyl necessarily, because it's almost impossible to do that by just, attacking Venezuela, because Venezuela is only one country involved in the distribution of that highly potent drug. So that's the part where I diverge from that executive order, is because if they're using that as a justification to only invade Venezuela and only attack Venezuela, then that's not a legitimate justification, because Venezuela is only one piece of the puzzle. So that's the part where I start having an issue with it, because if they're truly trying to stop fentanyl, you got to deal with it in all the countries that they're distributing fentanyl out of, which is, Mexico, Venezuela, Colombia. I mean, they're countless. So that's where I have a problem with it. It gets into that area where it starts becoming more of a false justification, per se, just to hit on one country.
Yeah, I would have to agree. And also on top of that, this is completely misdirected because from what I know, Venezuela isn't really involved in the fentanyl trade. It's the Sinaloa cartel and the GNJG, I think is what you said it was earlier. I don't think I'm getting the alphabet letter.
CJNG.
The CJNG. Those are the two primary groups that the U.S. government states are involved in the lion's share, and I mean like it's something like 90% amongst the two of them, of the fentanyl trade that happens in the United States, and most of that crosses the border, the land border with the United States. Very little of it goes by the sea. So if that's also the other thing that doesn't really make sense of this. We're declaring this a weapon of mass destruction, and all of our military might, effort, and lawfare that we're directing towards anyone right now is being directed towards the Venezuelans in Tren de Aragua, which from what we understand are not even the two primary cartels involved in the fentanyl trade here in the Americas. Those are in Mexico. So it just it doesn't really make a lot of sense. And still, getting back to the original point, I'm going to have to stick with my guns on this one, folks. I just don't really see that meaning a traditional naming definition for a WMD. A narcotic, definitely, but a WMD, I feel like that's a bit of a stretch, even with how fatal it is. Other drugs are also still quite fatal as well in their normal raw form. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Wubba Real, who puts in a $30 support. And thank you very much, Wubba, for that very generous support. He said, pain is temporary, but Slayer is forever.
Hey! And I thank you so much for support. And great to hear that you like Slayer. I thank you so much for support. I haven't really listened to a lot of their music myself, but it's good to hear that you like them. So humongous thanks to you once again for support. I hope that does address that well, Wubba. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Mark Dixon, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Mark, as well, for that $20 support. And he did not leave a comment, though. But thank you very much once again, Mark, for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, Mark, and helping this channel to keep on rolling. It is folks like you who have helped to make this thing possible for years and years. And thanks to folks like you, we'll be able to keep this thing running for quite a good time into the future. So humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
Now, let me propose something else to you folks. Could you imagine that instead of our presidential debates turning into the cesspools they've turned into now, could you imagine, and I'm 25 years old, okay? I recognize that I lack a little bit of life experience that some people that may be, 50, 60 years old may possess that I may not have to a certain degree when it comes to nuances of really complex topics. I have the general knowledge. I've obviously gone to college for political science and things like that, but some nuances I may be missing on. But here's the sad part. I'm 25 years old. The Enforcer is 23 years old, I believe.
Yes.
And we can have a semi-intelligent debate about a topic like this. And the people that are running for president that are like 70 and 80 years old can't have a coherent discussion about topics that are serious like this. That's disappointing. Like, that's extremely disappointing to me. And we're just on YouTube. We're reporting about the wars, we're reporting on global news, and we can have a discussion about something like this. This isn't even my expertise. I'm not an expert in narcotics at all. I don't hardly know much about them, but I can still at least intelligently discuss it to a certain degree. I mean, they need to get better people. I mean, honestly, it's not political. That's just across the board.
Also, on top of that, we can have a debate like this, but at the end of the day, folks, if you're in the administration, it doesn't come down to what Matthew and my layman opinion is on this. We would call them the DEA or something like that if you were in a government position and have someone brief you on it and then ask them, since you're a subject matter expert on this and this is your career field, do you consider this to be a weapon of mass destruction or not? And if every analyst that we got in from the DEA said, yeah, I would generally lean more towards it not being a weapon of mass destruction, it's just a deadly narcotic, or it is a weapon of mass destruction. You generally kind of lean on their opinions because they're inside of the government agency that works with that every day. They probably would have a very more in-depth understanding of which opinion on that would probably be the more correct, and say, I would more so advise that I would think this. And then you listen to the word of your experts and advisors that you have around you and generally formulate the idea off of that as well, which is something that the government doesn't do currently. Because from what we've heard, the president believes that he knows everything, so he doesn't need advisors. He actually tells the advisors what to think, which is like, at that point, why do you have advisors if they're not advising you and you're advising them? It's not like they're making the decisions, so why tell them how it is? I don't get it. But anyways, with that, I hope that has addressed that well, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Christopher Walls, who puts in a $20 support. And thank you, Christopher, as well, for that support. He said, keep up the great work, fellas. And how long can Putin ignore the damaging effects of the economy?
I think he can try and ignore it for as long as he can, really until the public starts rising up in rebellion against the Russian government. I think he'll be able to ignore it until that happens, because it seems like he's going to keep going on ignoring it, and that sort of a tactic until it's inignorable, which will probably be some sort of a public uprising. And so with that, I hope that is addressed the best I can. A big thanks to you for the support, and we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 20 from Jenna, last name Tolls, have TDS, Total Dissolved Solids. And they put in a $20 support. And thank you very much, Jenna, for that support once again. And unfortunately, they redacted the super chat.
Oh, I do thank you so much for the support, though. I wish we could have addressed what you put in, but we thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And unfortunately, they redacted the whole name too, so I can't remember who put that super chat in. But Jenna actually put in a $20 support a second time, I think. But I can't remember. The first one was redacted. But Jenna said, on June 4th, 1989, the Chinese military used force. Oh dear, can I read this one off? By the way, Enforcer, I don't have a problem with saying it, but does YouTube have a problem with this?
Let me do a little check on that real quick, because honestly, I don't know why in the world we should even be asking that question. This is the United States, but let's see. Hold up. No, because there's a lot of videos on YouTube that have gotten an extreme amount of exposure on that very topic, so we should be able to make sure.
Good. Just got to make sure, because you never know these days. You never know what's going to get somebody pissed off and maybe want to shut you down or something. Just want to make sure, though. But it looks like maybe we're safe. Maybe I was just being overly cautious. But Jenna said, on June the 4th, 1989, the Chinese military used force, including tanks and armed soldiers, to clear Tiananmen Square and surrounding areas, killing hundreds to thousands of civilians.
It was bad. It was incredibly bad. And it's something that China actually doesn't like anyone talking about at all. Funnily enough, folks, if you type in Tiananmen Square or anything like that with 1984 on it in China, the Great Firewall, which is China's internet system, will automatically censor you and completely cut off your internet connection immediately for a set period of time. So it's actually a very touchy topic in China, and there are some things that YouTube does not like people talking about at all about modern China or China at all, which particularly pertains to what goes on in Western China, which generally seems to be something of a no-no topic. And someone said, wow, you're afraid to tell what happened in China? Well, it's not that we're like scared of the Chinese, it's more so we're kind of scared of possible censorship elsewhere that could directly affect us, and we really can't do anything about it if it happens. So we've got to be kind of careful about how we tread. So beyond that, though, it was a horrific tragedy, and really honestly does show the absolute depths that the communist Chinese government will go to suppress the people and pretty much run China with an iron fist, a lot like they do the territory of Hong Kong these days and everywhere else in China. So a big thanks to you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Howard Turgell, who puts in a $20 support. And thank you very much, Howard, as well, for throwing in that generous support. He said, the cheese has slipped off the cracker.
And I'll have to say, it definitely has. But I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. And I see a lot of people asking, well, you really had to censor yourself on that or consider that? Yeah, we do, because if y'all don't know, there's actually a decent amount of pull that the Chinese Communist Party had historically, especially in the latter part of the 2010s here in the United States of America, especially on private companies and institutions that would actually self-censor themselves to try and appease the Chinese to be able to be marketable within the People's Republic of China and gain a market share within their country. So for that reason, because of that, there are certain censorship protocols that exist on certain platforms, like wink, nudge, nudge, that make it to where you can't really talk about particular things. So one of them, like, I can't even say what it is, but I can kind of like allude to it, is the very well-known situation that's happening in Western China. That's something that you really can't touch on a lot if you want to, you know, stay around. So that's actually something that is a bit of an issue, and you know, we actually have to censor on a lot of stuff, folks. Believe it or not, we would love to be a lot more open, but the truth is that if it's not an institution like a private company or something that might self-censor, then it may also be the government these days. Not to say that that's going on right now, but the entire time that we've been on the internet, we've been basically having to try and play the game of let's not piss off whoever's in charge politically in the country, because they generally use their leverage on private companies to make sure that certain things are not said, depending on what they like or don't like. So that's kind of the world that we kind of live in.
And also, it's like we don't like it, folks. Like, if y'all think that we're like one of these people, it's like, oh, they might come, like say they don't like what we're saying. It's that we're not worried about that. We're worried about being deplatformed. That's what we're worried about. It's about losing our voice, like to have a voice at all. That's the worry. It's not about, you know, is somebody not going to like what we're saying? We see all kinds of controversial stuff all the time. That's not the problem. It's about being removed. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Not saying the platform would do that, by the way, but you just got to be cautious about certain topics, because there are powerful interests out there that could decide, well, we have the power to yank them off, and we might just, you know, take them off that platform or something. You never know.
Yeah, you know, and also like something that a lot of people don't know is that the government in some ways, and this is something that we can speak of personally because sometimes bulletins we put out on it, the government will lean pressure a good bit on social media companies to curb certain things that are said and to promote other things that they like. That actually happened a good bit in the last administration and is actually happening a little bit in the current one, because the First Amendment only exists in open public forums like public parks and such. It doesn't exist on the internet, and especially inside of the realm of private companies. So the U.S. can actually kind of lean some pressure on the private companies to make sure that they censor certain things and that they don't on others, with the threat of possible regulation or legal action being taken against them for other things that the U.S. government might be able to make actionable. So that is a little bit of what we have to deal with, and we kind of have to thread that needle very carefully so that way we don't end up kind of stepping out of line and getting on the chopping block for whoever's in charge at the moment. So just giving y'all a little bit of reality.
And also, private companies have the right to do that, by the way. It's not illegal. There's nothing wrong with them doing that. Now, from an ethical, moral standpoint, there's something wrong with it, because once again, they're silencing a voice that had a right to say something. At least under the Constitution, they had a right to say something. But that doesn't apply to private companies. They have the right to, you know, let whoever they want on their platform, and they also have the right to remove whoever they want as well. So the free part about free speech in America is if you get deplatformed, then you have the right to go start your own platform. But obviously, that's not just like as easy as 1, 2, 3. That's a huge undertaking. That's not something simple. So, you know, you're at the mercy of private companies. That's the reality of it.
Yeah, some people are like, well, the First Amendment exists. Yeah, it does, but the First Amendment exists for you as an individual. That doesn't mean that you can walk into Walmart and start saying that, you know, free Palestine or I support Israel. You can't do either of those in Walmart. They have the right to kick you out. Like your rights, your constitutional rights, like free speech and the right to bear arms, that only exists in your own property or in public areas. Private properties do have, and private institutions do have the right to set their own laws and standards. Well, not their own laws, but their own standards of what they accept and don't accept. And say if you're on social media and you say something crazy on Facebook that's against their terms of service, you have a First Amendment right to say that in a public park, but you don't have a First Amendment right to say that on a private platform like Facebook, which is a company. And you don't have a right to carry, say, a firearm into Walmart. They have a no firearms policy, and they can trespass you from their premises for carrying a firearm on their property. You know, that's where your rights end, because your rights are ending where another person's rights begin, is basically the best way to explain it. So with that, I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a $20 support from Remy Andre Rogsnoy. And thank you very much, Remy, for that $20 support right there. And we do appreciate that very, very much. And did not leave a comment, though, but we do appreciate it. And we also had a 20 from Eleno, who said, people forget that most narco are moving to synthetic drugs because they are most cost effective than having to maintain acres of cocoa fields. But they said if anyone is in doubt of Venezuela producing fentanyl, then you can simply go look at a different one there.
And thank you for supporting and sharing that with us, because that's very interesting information to hear. Generally, though, the two main cartels that are involved in the fentanyl trade basically get all of their raw materials to produce fentanyl, or they get raw fentanyl from the People's Republic of China that is then shipped into Mexico. So the inherent ability to produce fentanyl within the Americas, from what we understand, isn't really a prevalent sort of a feature. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best we can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And also, by the way, I see Lord Cog saying this. I'll be honest with you, Lord Cog, I held the same belief before I went to the year of law school I went to. And then after that, I was like, I think I'm a little bit wrong on that. But Lord Cog said, why should my rights as a human end because a private platform decides it should be that way? Well, the problem is it's not a human right to free speech. There's plenty of countries around the world where humans exist that you don't have the right to free speech at all. Like you either say what the government wants you to say, or you get in some deep trouble. So it's a legislative right that's been given to us by the Constitution and the United States specifically. So you have to abide by the Constitution, not necessarily a human right. It would be nice if everybody had the human right to free speech, but that's just simply not the way it works because of sovereign countries. But the way it's set up is you have the right to say whatever you want in public forums if it's public. But if it's private, though, if it's a private platform, then the private platform has autonomy. And that's a distinction in democratic countries that are capitalist, as you have that autonomy as a private company. If you look at the contrary, the converse of that, if the government told private companies, you must let people say this, and that's the end of it, then that means the government is then telling that company how to operate, which runs contrary to our system of government. And we can't have it both ways. While it would be good to have the private platforms allow people to have free speech, the government simply can't get involved in telling them that, or otherwise that removes the autonomy of a company.
And also, on top of that, that also extends into your private life. For example, on this channel, when people come in here and they cuss us out, or they threaten us, or they say that we're stupid, or that they disagree with us and we're idiots, we ban them. They completely lose their speech privileges here on the show. They never get to talk here again. They're permanently banned. And as private citizens running our own YouTube channel, if the speech that exists in our live chat is entirely by our benevolence for the general part, because people are coming into basically our space that we control and are having or throwing in their 2 bits, and if we don't like it, they go. Same thing with YouTube. If YouTube doesn't like one of the creators, like us who are on the platform, we go, and that's how it is. Like, for example, if you're in your house, Lord Cog, and someone comes in there and goes, F you, mother effer, I'm going to beat the hell out of you, you can sit there and say, get the hell off my property. And they don't have, and if you call the police, you can have them trespassed, and they're going to have to go. They don't have a right to sit there and say, no, I can tell this guy to F off in his own house, I'm going to beat the hell out of him, because I have a right to free speech. Their right only exists if, say, they were like on a public sidewalk or a public roadway, and they were screaming that at you at your house, but then that'd probably get into harassment eventually. But they technically have that right at that point, but once they get on your private property and they do that, that's where their rights generally end to continue to do that without you taking any form of action like having them trespassed or telling them to leave the property or something along those lines. So that's...
But there is a limit to it, though. There is a limit. Companies cannot discriminate against people. If a company tries to deny you services because of your race, religion, and things like that, that's lawsuit territory. That's something that they're not allowed to do. You can't deny services to people if they're discriminating. So that's something there that all companies in America, they avoid that like the plague. Like if they're smart, they avoid that like the plague. They don't get into that at all, not even within like 10 feet or something like that, because those are very, very bad claims to deal with in court. So that's the limit to it. They can't discriminate. They have the freedom to operate as an autonomous company, but they can't start denying, portions of the population services based on some, made up thing in their head. They can't do that.
Yeah, now one thing that can happen though, folks, is that the FCC actually can regulate certain bodies, like they do regulate television and the radio, and the radio is extremely regulated because when the FCC was created, it was actually created to control the broadcast on radio and to ensure fair equality, such things like that. Television hardly had that extended to it. And the internet as a whole has never had hardly any FCC regulations put on it to the level at which the radio or even the television got it at. So the internet, technically, as far as FCC regulations go, it's basically the Wild West. There really is no protection against being, say, deplatformed or having the cane yank you off stage behind the curtains happening on the internet. That doesn't really exist here. But it does, like, if you look into the laws that exist that the FCC has on certain kinds of regulations on maintaining forms of speech or some form of neutrality, it is codified in radio broadcasts, like extremely codified. You can get your license revoked for radio broadcasts for a million different things if you don't follow the specific rules the FCC lays out. The TV is a lot less regulated and getting more on the line of laissez-faire. The internet is literally anything goes, basically. Like any platform can do whatever they want, and there really is hardly any regulation to what they can and cannot do as far as what they allow and don't allow.
Well, everybody saw what happened to Jimmy Kimmel, didn't they? It's like, and people saw that. I mean, now I'm not going to get into the specifics of that because that's very contentious. But I mean, there was some strange business going on with that whole situation. He's back, but I mean, there was a real big covfefe that went on with that whole situation for a minute.
Yeah, it really was. But with that, folks, Mandy, how many questions do we have left?
We have about 18 left.
Oh, dang, that's actually a pretty decent amount. I hope you all found these topics interesting tonight, folks, because I know that I've had a blast talking about them. I'm sure Matthew has too, but we're getting way far behind here. So with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Farmer Dave LSA, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Farmer Dave, for that support. He said, good evening, gentlemen, and was hoping for an LSA take on the Air Force Research Labs Vanguard rocket cargo program, and glory to the Republic and LSA.
And glory to the Republic. And unfortunately, I wouldn't be able to talk about that weapon system in great detail. I unfortunately don't know a great deal about that one at the moment, but I will try and look at it off air and get a little bit more information on it. And so a big thanks to you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep running. And Andy, I think you were thinking about Steve. I think you were thinking about. It was Cold.
That's a second one.
Yeah,
that's a separate one.
Yeah. Sorry, I was about to say. I think that was that guy. No, it was the other dude actually. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Wanshir TV, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Wanshir, for that support. And he said, Treasury quietly delisted foreign companies, stuff out of Cyprus, UAE, Turkey, Finland, that got hit before sneaking tech and parts into Russia, military machine, and there was no explanation either.
Yeah, that's actually true. That did happen today. We covered that earlier, and it's quite an interesting development, I'd have to say. But I do thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. But with that, I hope that does address that the best we can, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Spring Fauna, who puts in a 10. And Spring Fauna said, kibble for Alan and Aw Man the Fly.
Aw man. And you know what? We'll pull up the marmot for a second. We'll do a quick marmot segment. I know everyone loves the marmot. You know, back in the day, folks, the big thing was the honey badger. Nowadays, it's Alan the marmot. But hello there. Hey!
Oh, hello there, Governor. It's a big day. They're talking about Fent. They're talking about FCC regs. They're talking about the Constitution. They're talking about it all. But they didn't forget. They can bring it right back down to the level of hot dog, man. Tell us what you're saying, Fly.
Aw, man, I ride around with my phone out recording people and trying to harass them. Aw, man, it's a real blast to make my entire life about trying to make others' lives misery. Aw, man, what a fun time to be alive. Aw, man. Man, the Fly, he's tough, but anyways, it's great to have Alan the Marmot here, and we thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Jack Ray, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Jack, as well, for that support. He said, do Russian traditional family values, oh, yikes. I know what Jack's talking about here. Sadly, I can't repeat that on the air, though, but He has a comment to make about the Russian traditional family values not really holding up to, I guess you could say, scrutiny very much. Now, I will say, Jack, making a generalization across Russia, it's kind of hard to do that, in my personal opinion, because the Russians, there are obviously good Russian people out there that hate the war, but we just don't know exactly how much of the population of Russia hates the war and how much dislikes the war. So that's a tough one. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that's a tough one as well, but I do thank you massively for support and helping this channel to keep running. And we're on to the next one.
And our next one, also, by the way, a big shout out to Crispy, who just threw in a $5 support, by the way, and we do appreciate that very much, Crispy. And we also had a $10 support from Highlander, who put in the 10. Who said, the Chinese ship flew a Panamanian flag this year, and Panama has an agreement with the U.S. for enhanced security, and I think China has their hands tied legally due to that. And what are your thoughts?
That may be possible. That may be possible, actually. But usually, just because it's flagged out of Panama, if the ship is owned out of China, usually everyone can get involved at that point. That's what would happen back in the day when the Houthis would attack a ship, is that the ship would be owned by, say, Israel. It would be flagged out of Gambia. It would have a crew of Israelis, Dutch, Kazakhs, and others on board. And then also on top of that, there would be an insurance claim that was filed in, say, France. And basically every single country that was involved in that in any way, whether their citizen was on board, the insurance policy was in their country, the vessel was flagged out of where the vessel was owned by, any one of those countries could make a problem and then respond to that incident because they had some share of control or ownership of the vessel that was involved in that incident to some degree. So I hope that does address it the best I can from what I would know. Generally, their hands might be kind of tied, generally just because of their geographical isolation away from Venezuela, but that does not mean that they couldn't conduct reciprocal actions within the East Asian region in the seas near to China. So I hope that does address it the best I can, and a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also had a $10 support from Daniel Dixon. And thank you very much, Daniel, for that $10 support. He said, yo, brother, do a little unhinged Australian for me, LLT LSA. And I told you I was going to donate. And here's my first 2 Costco chickens for yous.
Well, I thank you for the support. And of course, I don't really care about their proclivities. Let a thousand blossoms bloom. But I ain't going to spend another minute on it because there's a man being eaten by a crocodile in the outback. Oh, man, don't talk to me like that. I punch blokes in the mouth for stuff like that. You put me on there. Oh, man. Dude. Man, God forbid you ask an Australian politician if they have Lebanese heritage, man. That's fighting words, apparently.
Oh, don't ask me about that. It's like the dude went bonkers over that question.
Man, that guy said, oh, excuse me, do you have any Lebanese heritage in your blood? Oh, don't say that. I punch blokes in the mouth for saying so like that. Oh, my God.
It's like, oh, dang. He's totally, like, emotionally stable. He's great. I like him again.
Oh, man. It's truly a blessing in Australia. But beyond that, I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep running. I hope you enjoyed that segment of an unhinged Australian politician. But a huge thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Econ Professor, who puts in a 7. And he said, Enforcer and Matt, thumbs up.
Hey, and thank you so much for the thumbs up. And thank you for the support and helping the channel to keep running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
Also, by the way, folks, I just want to say it is crazy. Like, I was looking back at the graph for the viewers of the night. It is insane how we retain people for that Fent conversation about the WMDs and Fent. That is crazy how many people stuck around for that, by the way. Apparently, that was captivating to people. It got people riled up. They wanted to stay and add their 2 bits in the chat. So the people apparently found that interesting, at least. Not sure if they enjoyed it, but they at least found it interesting, maybe. But, goodness, I'm choking here. I'm trying to get a little bit of water over here on the side while I'm yapping. But anyways, jumping into our next super chat, this one goes to Parbaked Potato, who puts in a 5, and he said, making a list, redacting it twice. Will we oh man, will we ever find out who's naughty or nice? Well, I don't know.
I just got back from a lovely trip along the Bahamas. I stopped on at the island to spend the holiday. Man, like we're going to start the Santa Claus is Coming to Town song, but change up the lyrics a little bit to fit the modern day. But of course, folks, that song is redacted, so we can't sing a lot of the lyrics there. All we can say is 9th Federal District 6th Circuit redacted, like, or something along those lines. But anyways, oh man, I gotta tell you, that was one hell of a super chat right there, and I gotta thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And you know, folks, we ought to release a Christmas single, Matthew, where it's literally like Santa Claus is coming to town, but it's got those lyrics. He's making a list, redacting it twice, like, you know, it goes through like the whole song that way. Man, that'd be a classic right there.
Honestly, I think if you put like some heavy auto tune on me, I think I could do pretty decent if you put some heavy auto tune on there. Without it though, I probably sound busted.
But dude, you got to do that trademark thing that everyone does on auto tune where they go, "Yeah," or something like that. Like, and, you know, you hear that stupid like scale thing go up. Man, honestly, man, that would be trademark right there. Or but you could do that too. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
Yeah, I don't know if you've seen that meme going around, but there's that guy who apparently went to like a music studio or a recording studio or something, and he went in there and like was yelling on the mic some crazy junk like, "Yeah, give me some money." He's like just yelling some stuff like that. I'm like, honestly, I feel like I would sound like that if I ever tried to like go in there and record something. Honestly, that could be hellish actually. But jumping into our next super chat here, this one goes to Ed, who puts in the 5, and Ed said, "Irish Ed here, and how can Russia start a war with Europe? They are broke." They have no money, and the Russian peeps don't even want anything to do with it, and please help me.
If they start a war, they don't have to win it. All they have to do is start shooting at NATO forces and then threaten nuclear warfare or get to nuclear warfare. That's basically what they're trying to do. It's a maximalist approach is probably the best way to explain it, is that they are going to escalate to pretty much pulling out all the stops off the bat. So they don't have to have a good military. They don't even have to have a good economy, because it's really not going to be fought on the ground, and it's also not going to last that long to where money would be an issue. So that's why we're saying a war is definitely possible, because as long as they force a armed confrontation, they can immediately get to threatening nuclear weapons. And then at that point, our hands are kind of tied. Are we going to, one, either have millions of people die in a tactical nuclear exchange, or even hundreds of millions of people die in a strategic nuclear weapons exchange, or are we going to have to go to the negotiating table and compromise with them and give them about half or most of what they want to avoid a nuclear war? And that's basically the sort of confrontation that they're trying to force. So it doesn't matter if they actually are able to win that war conventionally on the ground, or even if they have the finance to do that. It just matters more so, can they fire a rifle at NATO troops, and then by doing that receive return fire and then threaten a nuclear war over that? And the answer will always be yes, unless the Russian government has literally collapsed. So that's what we think the approach would be right now that would make that a possibility. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, at least the best I can. And a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, Irish Ed. And great to have you here again tonight. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Jigglesworth, who puts in a 5. And Jigglesworth said, since the Ruskies apparently blew up Santa last year, is Zelensky going to deliver the presents instead?
I, President of Ukraine, will deliver the presents. And when I say that, I mean flamingos to Moscow. Hit that.
But beyond that, you know, maybe. Oh, yeah, I forgot, man. They did shoot down Santa last year in that ad that they made, remember?
Oh, yeah, I remember that. And they had like the rats at the table and stuff like that in that weird commercial.
Yeah, it was bizarre, really. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 5 from Econ Professor, who said, Enforcer and Matt sells it to the 35%.
Hey, thank you for the support, and thank you for enjoying this channel. And I got to say, what 35%? Matthew, what are they talking about?
I think he was referring to maybe the pole.
Oh, the North Pole. Oh. But anyways, a big thanks to you so much for the support, and thank you for the kind words. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 5 from the Playmaker, who said, honestly, I'm not worried about the Chinese ship seizure. They literally can't do anything about it. Well, and anything they try hurts them more than us. Oh, no, they can definitely do something. I mean, China's got leverage. The U.S. has leverage too, though. But, you know, everything, like, people get mixed up. Being a strong country doesn't mean being like a wild and loose cannon. That doesn't mean being wild and loose. Like, strength is not being the loudest person in the room all the time. Like, that's what people get confused with a little bit. You got to be smart and strategic about what you do. And you can have all the firepower in the world and you still get bogged down in a really bad situation. So with China, you don't want to do too much much all at once that provokes them to do something stupid like invade Taiwan early or to start, closing, like, for example, the Taiwan Strait or something like that. You don't want them to, like, get crazy like that. So you got to sort of, like, judge it and play it smart, to say the least. But Enforcer, what say you?
Yeah, that's true. And also there is a lot that China can do back to us that wouldn't directly hurt them immediately. Like, for example, the Chinese Navy could just go out and seize one of our tankers that's currently somewhere in East Asia, or a container ship or any vessel that's flagged out of the United States or is American-owned in East Asia right now as a reciprocal action. And that's something that would hurt us because we would have to then deal with trying to get those sailors out of China that are now being detained and also have that vessel released. Or get in an armed confrontation with them and try and force them to release it without making any sort of a negotiation with them. So there is something that they can do. I mean, that's just one off the top of my head where they can do something and it hurts us and it doesn't directly hurt them. And then at that point, if we wanted to respond with tariffs, now we're hurting ourselves and we're hurting them. And then it's a net loss at that point. So there is something that they can do. They're not completely powerless. And on top of that, we also have to tread carefully because why in the world make the Venezuelan situation messy to where we're not just dealing with Venezuela, we're now dealing with China as well and further complicating the situation much more than it was. But I do thank you for the support and help with this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Jam Fan, who puts in a 5. He said, look up the Moscow theater crisis. The Russian government allegedly used fentanyl to incapacitate the entire building and actually eliminated half of them.
I think they used something else. Let's see. Yeah, it was like some form of sleeping gas, but it was... Let me see here.
It says a fentanyl derivative.
It was carfentanil and remifentanil.
Oh, damn. So they actually put fent in the building.
Man, they said, all right, everyone, go to sleep. It's like, damn, okay. Like, man, you don't want to be a hostage. Honestly, being a hostage in Russia is a terrible fate because you're probably going to get taken out along with the hostage takers. They don't negotiate with hostages. Well, they don't negotiate with hostage takers in Russia at all. So you're literally just at the mercy of not getting a stray bullet or at that point or something along those lines in Russia most of the time.
Are you sure? Are we sure it's fentanyl? Like double check that. Obviously, this is Wikipedia, by the way, but just taking it for what it is. It says remnant fentanyl. What it says an anesthetic. Okay, so it's not like the fentanyl. It's like it just has fentanyl in the name.
So this is actually sold under the brand name Wildenhill. So not exactly fentanyl. It's kind of like people saying an amphetamine. Well, methamphetamine is an amphetamine, which it is, but all amphetamines aren't meth. So kind of like that, but honestly, it is kind of crazy because if you look at the casualties, the Russians killed 132 hostages by using this gas, which is something in itself. There's a picture of them storming the building after they put everyone to sleep and put some people to sleep permanently in there with the gas. But with that, I hope that does address that well. The big thanks to you for the support and help this channel to keep running. We are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to WKRP in Salt Lake City, who puts in a 5. He said, Utah is very resilient to economic downturns and try B&D burgers, best shakes too. Honestly, I think it would be pretty resilient out here to that because it seems like a lot of smaller to medium-sized businesses exist here in Salt Lake City, which is something that you really can't say for like the entire rest of the country. So it seems like it would be resilient to that. Usually when economic downturns hit, the worst hit people are people that work for mega corporations because they start laying people off by the thousands. Usually small businesses don't do it like that. They do hit hard times, but they don't just start laying people off like that. But Enforcer, what say you?
Oh no, the shareholders are laying off half the company. Get lost. But anyways, man, hopefully it will be recession proof. Hopefully, I would hope so. And hopefully the Salt Lake is drain proof. Alfalfa farming, incredible stuff. But beyond that, I do have to say a big thanks to you for support and sharing that with us. And we will try out that burger place. There's an endless amount of restaurants out here with great food. And I haven't even gotten to trying all of them. And I'm gaining so much weight trying to try all of them too. I have to get on a diet. But a big thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
You know, it's a funny thing. After we moved out here to Utah, people said, "Dang, Matt, you're really glowing now." I was like, "Oh, dang, thank you. The channel has been growing recently." And they said, "No, you're actually glowing." I was like, "Huh?" And then I realized, oh, that's right. I forgot that Utah back in the day it had all those. Didn't they have like those nuclear tests and stuff like somewhere around here, and the nuclear radiation like came over the area or something?
It was the nuclear testing in Nevada, and the radiation it would spread up here and into Wyoming and stuff.
Oh yeah, yeah. So apparently it is true. So yeah, that's why we're glowing now because we got that Utah special out of here. Obviously, I'm joking by the way. If there's any type of like radiation leak that happened or something or it floated up here, it is likely the right word's not disintegrated, but it's likely dissipated by now. That's the word I was looking for. So it's probably just trace.
The radiation around here is normal background radiation, by the way. Like, the radioactive fallout from nuclear weaponry, it only lasts for, like, say, 2 weeks. And even by the fourth day, it's pretty much dissipated to hardly noticeable amounts. But after 2 weeks, it's completely disappeared, pretty much. And then you're back to normal background radiation. But, one thing that is funny around here, folks, is that it's not really the radiation you have to worry about. It's the industrial tailings. You see, in Alabama, there was a saying, "What are you, so dumb that you eat dirt?" Out here, if you eat the dirt, you'll become dumb. Because there's, all kinds of toxic stuff in the dirt out here, like, after you get, like, 6 feet down or so. If you ever... Huh?
Inches, so 6 inches down.
Oh, 6 inches, sorry. But if you
In
go...
some places though, that was only in the like areas that had a little issue.
But folks, if you dig down deep enough in some of those areas, which is just 6 inches, it's not that far, and then you get a handful of dirt and you eat it, you're gonna be like, "Oh, I feel like I'm becoming a lot more dumber," and then it's over for you. There's always that way to get medical benefits. I'm not that I'm recommending that though. Don't do that. That's stupid. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to AJ, who puts in a 5. And AJ said, he said, "I would suggest buying some silver." But I personally don't invest in the metals. I'll be honest with you. I don't personally. But I mean, to each his own. But Enforcer, what say you?
I feel a song coming on. Silver and gold. Silver and gold. Man, I gotta be honest.
Silver and gold, especially gold.
It's time to get cheap Lowe's decorations and cover them in gold leaf and coat the Oval Office with these.
Man,
man.
That is bad. Can I hit you with a sad horn?
Yes, please do. Fake news! Fake news! He says my singing's not great. People have been calling me on the phone and going, Sir, you sing so well. You sing better than everyone else. Surely the finest singing that we've ever heard, like a serenading. It's wonderful and incredible." I said, "Thank you. I think I'm better than Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart and even Kid Rock. Better than Kid Rock, I gotta be honest with you. Some people, they sit there and say, I wanna rock and roll all night. And I gotta say, everyone loves my singing. It's the greatest singing. It's just truly incredible. But beyond that, I do have to say, I don't personally invest in the metals myself either. I personally invest quite heavy in lead whenever I go to the range, but beyond that, I just don't really get into metals all too much. And I seem to have a habit of losing the lead. It usually goes down range towards usually like a steel or a paper target, and then I can't find it because it's in the backstop, and I'm like, oh, I'm like, where'd it go? But anyways, with that,
the best investment you can possibly make.
What is the best investment?
Invest in yourself.
Man, be a better man. Wake up at 6 in the morning. Make your bed.
Honestly, it's true, but at the same time, when you say it, it sounds cringy. I'm not gonna lie. Like anytime I ever hear somebody say that, I'm like, yeah, it's true. But at the same time, though, it sounds really cringy. It sounds like the opening to like one of those 1999 courses or something that you can buy. It's like how to pick yourself up and start running again or something like that. It's like, I don't really want like, that like too good of feel good stuff. It's like, can we just get like some straight up advice? Like, how do you live day to day and just simply just live? Like, can we just get like a living guide or something like that? Miss Disa said it sounds cheesy. It does sound cheesy. It sounds 1999. Like it costs like, the $20 number or something.
Hold up, man. You got to do it like a real alpha, Chad. Hold up. Let me get this right. You gotta wake up in the morning, bitch. You gotta make your bed and be an alpha male.
Who said that?
What color is your Bugatti?
Like, man,
Oh.
or when
I think that guy just lost a fight yesterday.
oh, dude, he got walloped. I saw him. He had like a black eye and everything. I was like, whoa. I mean, I was like, it was a bad day for internet personalities in the ring yesterday. I mean, people are getting laid out. I got to be honest with y'all though, folks. After watching that Jake Paul fight, and also seeing the memes, that was absolutely pitiful. I mean, like there was a picture of Jake Paul when he was like that guy was winding up to get him again in the face, and he looked absolutely terrified. Man, have you seen that picture?
Well, I mean, I'd be terrified too. That dude was massive. I mean, that dude probably had some power behind it. I think he did have some power. I heard allegedly that the guy got his jaw broke
In two
in two
places.
places.
Yeah, I mean, dude, did you see what I sent you? Go look at what I showed you on Instagram, man, because I sent you something before the show. It was actually him in the hospital, and it looks like he actually has like a jaw brace on, and his face is like swollen up like bad. Like go take a look at it. We can't show it on air, but take a look at it because man, he's looking bad. He's busted. Really.
Yeah, it's bad.
I mean, oof. I got to be honest with y'all, folks. I don't think anyone can pay me that amount of money to go in the ring with that big dude and get my ass beat, because there's no one I think who could beat that guy's ass. He's like 6'7" and like 250 pounds. I mean, you're like that's going into a ring to get mauled. Like unless you're in that weight and height category.
It's like, well, why do you agree to go in there and fight a dude that was like that large? Like that's not the right size to be fighting. It's like, why would you pick a fight like that?
Man, I would think, I'll be honest with you, man, my 2 cents, I think the guy got a little bit too full of himself, you know, having fought like Mike Tyson and stuff, and he thought, you know, oh, now that I fought these dudes who were like in their 60s and way out of their prime, I can go take on someone who literally was just in their prime. Which it's like that. I mean, like if that was the logic there, that was bad thinking. It's like if I was fighting folks who were like in their 60s and stuff and could like hardly walk, I wouldn't go from that to fighting like the just former heavyweight champion directly. You know, like I feel like that's just setting up for failure. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Bailey Alejandro, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Bailey, for that $5 support. They said, I thank y'all for y'all's news, and y'all always make me informed, and I truly love you boys.
Hey, and thank you so much for the kind words. And we love to know that you enjoy our news and that you feel really informed after you take a listen to the show for a little bit. So a big thanks to you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And also CTAF said Mike Tyson took out many dudes more than 6 inches taller than him in his prime. Yeah, and that's what I agree. It was in his prime, though. You know, like Mike Tyson is a special example. He's like the Jack Dempsey of his time, and you know the Klitschko of his time. He's undefeatable. You know, like he was just one of the best out there. But I would like, you know, I think everyone can qualitatively say, opinion based, Jake Paul isn't the best boxer out there. He's not a Mike Tyson in his prime. You know, he's
hell no. Like
he's more so of like a dog and pony show sort of a trick deal, you know, like it's not
a spectacle.
Yeah, it's a spectacle more so than anything. So you know, it's not like, you know, that is comparable to Tyson in his prime. I mean, Tyson was something else. You know, and this guy, he's just more so of like a hype machine, and that's really it. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also had a 5 from Rafael Seda. And thank you very much, Rafael, for that $10 support you just threw in. And he said LLT, LSA, and USA.
Hey, and thank you so much for support, Rafael. And long live the Lee Spring Army and long live the Republic. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a 4 from Plazath, who said LSA, and a 2 from Uncovered Cube, who said LSA as well.
And long live the Lee Spring Army, and a huge thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And so with that, huge thanks to you once again. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and that is actually our last super chat right there to get to. So we are now jumping into our live chat questions proper and getting our Morse code decoders. And tonight we had the whole roster. We had Paul Schultz, Kevin J, Mason Miami, Joni Dog, Norm Pritchett, Arabelle Garbo, Heroic Fluffiness, Coach Cuphead X and Brian Blairstown. They said the Morse says Russia is getting their Christmas early with a gift of looming collapse and defeat. What a treat, LSA.
And that's the sound of money, and y'all got that dead on the nail. That was the Morse code message of the night, and I gotta say, truly amazing to see that it's a wonderful and incredible thing to know that the Lee Spring Cinema Corps has gotten that message correct again, and it was quite a good one, I'd say. I wrote it, I'd know. But anyways, to that, folks, it's time for us to move on into the live chats, but due to time constraints, folks, sadly, we're only going to be able to get 3 live chat questions, and then we're going to have to round out this stream for the night. So we're on to the third to last question of the night.
Also, by the way, let me see here. Let me go up and see how this guy described himself. Let's see here. we have a guy with the username the Russian president with a Russian flag. He's a bot, by the way. He's here saying we will prevent this stream from being viewed in the Russian Federation. I'm not shocked about that, by the way. Let's see here. He said 100% taking over the Enforcer channel. I said, oh damn. He also said, let's see here. What did he describe himself as? He said he's the Kremlin Social Club or something like that. He said, why do you not like me? I mean, you know, it depends. It depends, really. He said, he's shocked. He's shocked. He's shocked.
Oh, heavens. Right, he's
so
clutching,
shocked.
he's clutching his pearls, right?
He said, he's been called out. He said, he's been shocked. Look at them standing there in shock. They're in shock. He said, sir, they're in shock. He said, we are the Kremlin. I bet you are, buddy. We had a guy in here last night that was NSA, by the way. we have them all. We get all kinds in here. We get people that claim to be the Russians. We get people that claim to be, look, the Ukrainian president's here too. Look at that. Okay. So apparently this is probably one of the longtime channel viewers that's making other accounts. I would imagine at this point. I thought it was a real bot for a minute. I was like, they were actually botting pretty solid.
Man, honestly, man, I was seeing that there for a second. I was like, he's gonna mention the Ukrainian president eventually. He's also in the chat, and then you didn't see it. And I was like, you'll eventually get it. It'll pop up again. But man, that was a pretty good. Oh, look at that. They're responding. Yeah, it's one of our.
Two of them. That's somebody is dedicated. Like somebody's dedicated. I don't even know how you do that. Like, how are they chatting? Wait a minute. You can't chat on two different accounts at the same time.
Well, maybe they have two different devices open, near to each other with two different accounts.
Either.
Oh, really?
I don't think so.
Maybe it's two
apparently
friends.
They're two different people, apparently.
Maybe it's two friends. Yeah, maybe it's two friends who coordinated this, maybe. Interesting, though. It's pretty funny. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next super chat, and then we'll be getting on to the 3 live chats.
And this one goes to Atrocious, who put in a 10 and said, missed you guys tonight, and sorry for my lacking humor. I just woke up from my gin nap in Sandy.
Oh, and that's quite all right. And Sandy, Salt Lake City? Is that what you're saying? That's quite interesting. But I do think you've answered for the support, Atrocious, and helping this channel to keep on running. And that's quite all right by me. Quite all right by me. Everyone's got to take the edge off however they like. And so with that, a big thanks to you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And apparently this person is on one account. Apparently doing the 2 accounts. So
man, that's a lot of effort right there. Honestly,
yeah.
That's big time effort. Also, by the way, a $2 super chat from Eric Plays Games, and he said hi there and much love to the LSA.
Hey, and LSA, great to hear. And so with that, I thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that quite well. And with that, are we on to the third to last question of the night?
And this one goes to none other than Eugene Hayes, who said, what do you think is the probability of Ukraine launching missiles at Moscow directly, or maybe Moscow's power infrastructure?
I would say the direct attacks against Moscow at this point would be well and easily justified, in my honest opinion. So I would say, yeah, I'd be 100% for it, me personally. But I hope that does address that well. And also, someone said, Dagra said, you got to ask yourself, why the downvotes? It's all about your attitude about the president and how you all think about him. It shows you're not all on Team USA. Your downvotes are why.
What's a downvote?
I guess he's talking about dislikes. I don't know if you know this, dude, but we have a 95% like rate right now on the stream, which is average for live streams. Like, that's well within average. So, I guess if you consider us to be wildly popular and liked, which is a 95% like rate, to be bad, I don't really know where you're getting that one from. And also on top of that, my patriotism isn't connected to a man. Like, it's not connected to an old white dude with white hair who likes ice cream and lives in Delaware, and neither is it connected to some gaudy dude who loves gold who has a weird hairdo that wanders around and talks in a really funny way. My patriotism isn't connected to just some random dudes. My patriotism is connected to the concept of the nation and the republic, which is what patriotism really is. If your patriotism is defined by the love of a sole individual, that's not patriotism, that's cult worship, and I'm not in cult worship. So there you have it. And it doesn't really reflect in our like ratio either. So I guess it's quite unfortunate for the point that you're trying to make. But anyways, with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one is going to go to none other than the Wisdom to Know, who said, where does Russia get the money and armaments for such a long campaign?
generally from their own coffers. I mean, they had a lot of weapons in reserve, and they're not really running on a lot of money. They're actually cannibalizing a lot of stuff in Russia to try and come up with the money to keep this going for so long. But that's basically how it is. They had a large stockpile of weapons beforehand. They also are getting a decent amount of help from China currently for drone warfare purposes, and they also are cannibalizing basically everything within their country to try and keep the war going right now. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and a huge thanks to you once again for a great question. And with that, folks, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is going to be AF Kaplan. And he said, what assistance could Iran offer Venezuela when their people don't have any water?
They're talking about Venezuela or Iran?
They're saying, what can Iran give Venezuela?
Oh, shoot. I thought they said, what could Venezuela do when they don't have any water? I was like, I thought that was Iran. While they could send over their navy, I don't even think they can make it out there. I don't even think they have the range to do that, but they could technically do that, or they could try and ship them weapons somehow. I don't really know how they do that either. So there really is no way that they can help them other than moral support and, going, let's go, you got this, give me a V, give me an E. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and we've reached the end of tonight's stream, folks. I got to say, we're entirely honored and greatly appreciative to know that so many of y'all have been enjoying the stream tonight. We've had 108,000 people watch the stream before it ended, and we had about 13.3 thousand people here at the peak tonight. We are entirely honored and greatly appreciative to know that so many people continue to enjoy this stream and consider us to be their primary source of news. We will be seeing you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the news from around the world and to also run our Sunday night fundraiser. And, of course, folks, if there is a video to be made, Enforcer Matt will be the one making it tomorrow. So with that, we will see you all then. Good night, good luck, take care, stay safe. Slava Ukraini, Heram Slava, long live the Lee Spring Army, and long live the Republic.
And with that, folks, thank you all for joining us once again tonight for 108,000 plus people that were here by the end of the stream. And we will see you all tomorrow night at 10 p.m. Eastern for the next Nightly War News stream. And tomorrow is the Sunday night fundraiser, by the way. So be sure to join us for that to help raise more funds for those in Ukraine to help the civilians survive the war. But in the meantime, we will see you all on the short video as well if there is enough news to cover. And of course, Slava Ukraine, Heram Slava, get some rest, and good night.